With the 5th overall selection, the Nashville Predators in the 2025 NHL entry draft select from the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, Brady Martin.
Now, as you see this, it's seeding season back home for him. And if one of the Martins couldn't take care of the Cows, none of them were going to go. So he's stuck with the Martins, Beaksy. And I know you love this player's story.
And a real hardcore farming background, all work ethic, all commitment.
Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Jake Lyman is with us today. Hello, Jake.
Hello, Jerry. What's going on?
I'm doing outstanding. You know what's going on. You heard it right there. You heard it from Shea Weber on some golf course, zooming into the NHL draft, which was an abomination in and of itself. The Nashville Predators select Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick. Now, I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but in the last segment of the program on Friday, I predicted that the Nashville Predators would select Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick. Now, I thought that was going to be because Hagens went 4th, but again, that's what I thought was going to happen. And I'm not going to lie to you. When Brady Martin was the pick, I was speechless. Legitimately speechless. I'll explain that in a little bit. But I wasn't shocked. The writing had been on the wall as far as the Predators and what Brady Martin brings to the table. Now, I'm going to have to go on a rant today, but it's not just going to be pointed in one direction. Because I need to address you people, and I need to address Barry Trotz and his decision-making. And I need them to be separate entities. So, as the Athletic said last week, Brady Martin was the most competitive player in the draft, and it wasn't close. And Barry Trotz was on our program on Tuesday, and he said the thing he really valued was your level of compete. And I said on the program last week, if this is a Trotz pick, it will be Brady Martin. But I figured if James Hagens was there, the organization would push Trotz into the Hagens corner, and I was wrong about that. So now to the two parts. First, you people. I want to start on the you people, because it's easier to just get this out of the way. I did not like the Brady Martin pick over James Hagens either. I was not happy about that. Had it been Porter Martone over James Hagens, I wouldn't have liked it, but I would have understood. But the amount of people on Friday night that just absolutely lost their minds, as if the Predators went totally off the beaten path and picked somebody who nobody had ever heard of. And Predators fans on Twitter starting to talk about Colton Sissons and Austin Watson. Like, oh, Barry passed on a number 1 center for Austin Watson. I'm like, guys, come on. Be fair. That's the rule around here. Brady Martin is a good player. I actually think Philadelphia, who went Martone at 6, would have gone Martin with the 6th overall pick if he was there. He was absolutely a prospect in that range, of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How often during the NFL draft, for instance, do you see Mel Kiper Jr. has so-and-so as the 6th best player, but they go 4th instead? It happens all the time. That's what happened here. Brady Martin was not a reach. It was not a player that people thought was going to go in the teens. It was a guy most people thought was going to be gone by the 7th pick in the draft. Again, what's the difference between the 5th and the 7th pick? So the belly aching, like the Predators drafted some bum over a superstar, I thought was overblown. So that's the first thing I want to get out of the way. You people, Brady Martin was worth the pick. Like he was, as far as a prospect is concerned, representative of the value for the 5th overall pick. Now, to Trotz. This felt to me like Barry Trotz, the coach, made the draft choice. That fierce competitor, the gamer, the guy who laces them up every day of the week, no matter what. It's almost idealistic to think of the player when you're picking fifth to be the best leader, the toughest competitor, the guy who never gives in, the guy who never backs down, and him also being a high-end talent. Motor matters. Heart matters. Work ethic matters. Dependability matters. That's why Ryan Johansson flamed out in the NHL. Because at the end of the day, Ryan Johansson didn't really give a rat's ass about hockey when push came to shove. And Brady Martin doesn't have that problem. Matt Duchene walked into a meeting, from what I was told. Matt Duchene walked into a meeting after having a bad season and said, I thought I played pretty well. You will not have that problem with Brady Martin on this team. And yet, at the same time, it feels like Brady Martin lacks that extreme high-end offensive skill that James Hagens and Porter Martone both have. And if you are going to win at the highest levels in the NHL, you need that high-end offensive skill. When Barry Trotz was the coach, the Predators were always a bunch of grinders. They were built from the blue line out. But at times, it was quite frankly hard to watch. I remember that Vancouver series in 2012. Vancouver could just pass the puck up and down the ice. They could just set up camp in your zone. And for you, you had to hope that between Weber and Suter and a young Roman Josi and Pekka Rinne in that they could carry you to victory. And then on the other side of it, you had to pray that maybe Joel Ward could poke one in there every now and then. You can't get past teams on a consistent basis in the NHL playoffs if you do not have high-end offensive skill. Brady Martin is a solid prospect. But after that terrible season that the Predators just had, and let's be real, it was terrible. The hope had to be that finally, for once, this team could pick someone who could lead the way, who could be that offensive, high-end skill player. And it just feels like Brady Martin has the desire to be that kind of player, but doesn't necessarily have the talent to be that kind of player. Again, Ryan Johansson had the talent to be that kind of player. He didn't have the desire to be that kind of player. Mike Fisher, meanwhile, absolutely, I thought, had the desire to be the very best he could be every night on the ice. But Mike Fisher didn't have Ryan Johansson's talent. And sometimes with coaches, they think one of two things. They either think, I can coach up a talent who either doesn't have the fundamentals or doesn't have the work ethic because I can coach him, I can get through to him. And at times, sometimes I think there are coaches that say, I just want the guy who gives me 100% every day because I can coach him everything he needs to know. You give me 100% every day, and I'll give you 100%, and we'll make the best combination of coach and player you've ever seen. And that's why it feels like, in this case, Barry Trotz chose heart over talent. And while, again, I don't have a problem with that, I understand. If you've got all the talent in the world, but you don't give a rat's ass, you're not going to be very good. But at the same time, the only way you really get high-end talent in the NHL is you either trade for it because somebody's asleep at the wheel or desperate to keep their job by winning today, or you stink bad enough to get to pick high in the draft. And when you get that pick high in the draft and there is high-end talent that is available, offensive hockey skill, you have to take it. If they had drafted Hagens and they had missed, it would not have gone over well. But at the same time, it would have been taking the shot on the talent that you most often cannot draft. Again, Brady Martin has talent, but is it enough talent? Because with his level of compete, if he had enough talent, he probably would have gone number 2 in the draft. So at the end of the day, I have to get on you people because you people, again, acting like this is Austin Watson is insane. That is completely unfair to Brady Martin. He was a well thought of prospect. He was a highly regarded prospect. But at the end of the day, Barry Trotz picked like a coach. He had the opportunity to get the more talented guys, and he passed. Because he looked at it like a coach would. Give me 100%, son. Give me 100% every day. Those are the teams that Trotz coached here. You want to know when Trotz won the cup? When he got to Washington and they already had Alexander Ovechkin. So as much as I like Barry Trotz and I am rooting for Barry Trotz, I got to say this felt like Barry the coach making a pick, not Barry the general manager. And a lot of the moves that haven't worked around here, I feel like have been mistakes from Barry the coach. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get in. That's 615-737-1025. We will be taking your reaction all day long. So that's the first move, the Brady Martin pick. Now the second move, the Nicholas Hague trade. Now, Jake, you're kind of new to doing this with me. I mean, I know we've worked on and off in the past, but I have to ask you, do you know my rule?
Yes. If you don't know who he is, then he sucks.
Okay. I did not know who Nicholas Hague was. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 105 the game.
So let me ask you now, July 1st is coming up. Last year you guys were very active. What do you think it's going to be like this year in terms of maybe moving some pieces around or adding some pieces? What do you expect to do with your team in free agency?
Well, last year, obviously, I think I won July 1, according to everybody. And I was the one that said, too, it's fantasy hockey until it, become a good team. We did most of our work last year, and then the way the season went, I was using the term clean the porch a little bit for our young guys. The plan hasn't changed for us. The plan has always been in pen, and really the path has been in pencil. And I didn't think we were going to have the year we had last year, but when we went to where we were last year, as I said, this year we're going to start the infusion of some younger players. We've got a really good group that we feel that are ready to pop out of the American League. They've spent a year, maybe 2 years in the American League, and they're now ready to contribute at the National Hockey League level. So it'll be a really good blend.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz on the NHL Network on Saturday. And surprise, surprise, on Sunday, Barry Trotz making moves. Last night, I was well asleep, and I caught wind. Again, I was actually on the radio this morning at 5 a.m. And so I was sleeping last night, and I got wind, got a message, hey, something may go down. And I didn't know what it was going to be. And then I saw Darren Drager tweet out that the Predators were making a move for Nicholas Hague of the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Now, the rule is, we call it the Mikael Granlund rule. If I don't know who a player is and the Predators acquire that player, then I assume that player sucks. Every now and then, there's a player I've never heard of that the Predators acquire who actually helps the team and becomes a solid player. But most of the time, I feel like I watch enough hockey that I know who's good. And the guys that don't ever stick out to me, I couldn't tell you, couldn't help you, nope, no good. And so with this guy, I've never heard of him. So I saw last night that the trade went down. Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon, and Colton Sissons was a very, very good Nashville Predator. I do not want to dismiss what Colton Sissons means to the Nashville Predators, because Sissons was here and was productive and was solid in that bottom six center line for a long, long time across multiple coaches. We all know about game 6 of the Western Conference Final, etc. But I'm not boo-hooing over the loss of Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon. Again, with all due respect to Colton Sissons and the career he put together as a Nashville Predator. He's a very good Nashville Predator. That said, I then started listening to Robbie this morning, and it doesn't sound like this trade makes any sense. I mean, it makes sense to me why Vegas would make the trade. Vegas spins up to the cap so they can get rid of one of their third-pair defensemen who is a pending restricted free agent who is worth $5.5 million because, well, that's what you're paying him. For a third-pair defenseman at $2 million, that's Lauzon, and a center at $2.85 million. Then the Predators retained half of Sissons' contract, so Vegas is now getting the third-pair defenseman and a bottom six center for $3.43 million. So they basically saved themselves $2 million compared to just keeping Nicholas Hague for a third-round pick that becomes a second if they make it to the Western Conference Finals. And this trade would actually make sense to me if Hague was a right-shot defenseman. There's one problem with that. He's not. And so I don't know who this guy is. And Robbie Stanley tells me he is a bottom-pair defenseman who is a left-shot guy. Adam Vingan was losing his mind today about the amount of money that the Predators are set to pay him. So I got to be honest here. I don't really get what Barry Trotz is doing other than being the general manager that teams go to when they want to dump players and salary that they don't want anymore. The Pittsburgh Penguins wanted to dump Michael Bunting on the Predators, so they did. And part of the deal was for Novak and Luke Schenn, and Pittsburgh turned around the next day and flipped Luke Schenn for a better pick than they gave you. The Devils dumped Eric Holla, who was horrible last year on you. So you took the cap hit. And to Adam Vingan's point, which I think is a fair point, you gave them a draft pick for Eric Holla. He was so bad last year, they should have given you a draft pick for Eric Holla. Now, let me say this. Michael Bunting was better than I expected. I watched him play, and I'm like, hey, this guy, he's got some toughness to him. He's got some spunk in his game. And I do expect him to be a top 6 forward this year. And then maybe the Predators can flip him at the deadline if they're no good. I don't know. But again, it just feels like when the Predators make trades now, it just feels like they're getting ripped off every time. And then they gave Nicholas Hague this contract, and everybody out there that would know anything, the analytics people, people that cover the league, Adam, Robbie, they see this contract and they're like, what? Why are you giving this guy this kind of money? So at the beginning, Barry Trotz made moves that, again, they weren't these groundbreaking, earth-shattering, franchise-altering moves by dealing Ryan Johansson and retaining half of his salary to get rid of him. But it made sense. You get rid of Johansson and you save $4 million over 2 years. Made sense to me. At the trade deadline in 2024, Barry Trotz, again, had all those first-round picks and everything else. And he didn't deal anything to go crazy because he was still kind of 1 foot in the rebuild. So what did he do? He dealt some low-level picks for Anthony Beauvillier and Jason Zucker. Made sense to me. And this just seems like a bad trade. And it seems like the Luke Schenn trade, when it happened, kind of felt like a ripoff. And the Eric Holla trade, when it happened, kind of felt like a ripoff. And once again, this kind of feels like a ripoff. So what's going on here? Because, again, I'm kind of getting a little tired of the Predators making a trade and then me looking to the Predators and looking to Barry Trotz and saying, okay, so explain this trade to me. Because I understand why the other team made the trade, but I'm trying to figure out why you're making the trade. So the Brady Martin pick, again, the two things. The Martin pick, that's the first thing. You people went nuts and I think overreacted on how you felt about the Brady Martin trade. Talking about him being the next Austin Watson, which I think is so unfair to Brady Martin's talent level. But it also felt like it was Barry Trotz taking a guy that Barry Trotz would want to coach and not taking the kind of talent that Barry Trotz needs on his team. And then the trade. Again, a guy I don't know, which means he probably sucks. Played third pair minutes in Vegas. And you gave him a $5.5 million contract? And you retained half of Colton Sisson's salary? Why are you doing that? Again, why are you doing that for them? So that they can turn around and trade Colton Sissons to the Toronto Maple Leafs to work out a deal for Mitch Marner, which is probably what's going to happen. Again, I get why Vegas did it. So that's my big thing. You want to know how I feel about the trade? This is how I feel about the trade. I get why the other team did it. I don't get why the Predators did this. And this isn't the first trade in the last month where I'm sitting here saying, this kind of feels like a ripoff. At least I could understand the Holla trade when it happened. And they said, well, we want him to play next to Fedor Svechkov, defensive zone draws, things like that. Then you tell me Fedor Svechkov is going to be the second line center. I'm like, whoa. I don't want Eric Hall on the second line. He sucks. Luke Schenn was terrible. And yet Pittsburgh's general manager can flip him for a second round pick. You got a fourth. So the trading, this is some red flag stuff here that I am not a huge fan of. The Martin pick, again, I wouldn't have made that pick. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I get it. This trade feels like a ripoff. And this doesn't feel like the first time that the Predators lately have been ripped off. It is starting to feel like Barry Trotz is the general manager that other teams go to when they are looking for somebody to bail them out of a problem they have. That's not a good place to be. And yet, there's another trade where it looks like you bailed the Vegas Golden Knights out. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Let's hit your reaction. The pick is on the board. The trade is on the board. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
The Nashville Predators making an overnight trade, which has since been made official. The Predators traded Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon to the Vegas Golden Knights for left-handed defenseman Nick Hague and a conditional third-round pick. The condition on that pick is that it becomes a second-round pick if the Vegas Golden Knights win 2 rounds in the 2026 Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, at the time, Derek, when the reporting was coming out that this trade was being made, it was Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon for Nick Hague. And Nick Hague was being signed to a 4-year contract with a $5.5 million cap hit. And when I saw that, I said, this trade doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And now that it's out that the Predators are also getting a conditional 3rd-round pick in the deal because they are retaining half of Colton Sisson's salary, it makes me feel a smidge better. I emphasize that word, smidge better.
There you go. That was Adam Vinga today saying, well, hey, at least they're getting a 3rd-round pick. So that makes me feel a smidge better. Does it really? Again, 2 rounds of the playoffs for that conditional 3rd to become a 2nd. That's a pretty high bar. Sounds to me like this trade was a ripoff. That you traded a 3rd-pair defenseman and a bottom 6 forward in order to get another 3rd-pair left-shot defenseman and pay more money. Because you're paying $5.5 million, plus you're paying the 1.4 or whatever with Sissons. I mean, that's $7 million between those 3 players. Or really for just the one in the pick. And the other thing that's crazy about that is Aaron Ekblad just signed, and I know Aaron Ekblad had to take a team-friendly deal. I get it. Aaron Ekblad just re-signed in Florida for $6.1 million. So a top pair right shot defenseman is $6.1 million today, and your 3rd-pair left shot defenseman is $5.5 million. It feels like a ripoff. And I hope I'm wrong, but I'm just calling it how I see it. 615-737-1025 phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Include the Brady Martin pick into this, and we'll get to your phones. One texter says, the problem I have with the draft is not taking Blake Fiddler, a right shot defenseman, at pick number 35. Now, here's where I'm not going to pretend to tell you anything about Blake Fiddler. I've never seen him. I don't know anything about him other than the fact that his dad was Vern Fiddler, who was a hardworking Predators player, and he's a right shot defenseman, which they desperately need. I mean, desperately need. That said, he's probably like 4 years away from the NHL. So they need a right shot defenseman today. It does not mean that he will be on the blue line this upcoming season. So I understand a lot of people have warm fuzzies because, again, they like Vern Fiddler, but I'm guessing the Predators did not like Blake Fiddler's game. They won't say it, but when you pass on him 5 times like they did, they're probably not huge fans. Alex says Martin seems like his ceiling could be a more talented Ryan O'Reilly if he can make it. So a lot of people are talking about Sam Bennett as kind of the comp for Brady Martin. I'm not sure I necessarily see that. Here's what I think Brady Martin needs to do in order to justify being the 5th pick. He doesn't need to be a point per game guy, although that would be very, very nice. And I'm not sure that he has that type of talent. What he needs to be is he needs to be a Selke candidate. He's probably not going to win it early in his career because Alexander Barkov's probably going to win it every year for about the first 5 years that Brady Martin plays in the NHL. But Brady Martin, the way they describe his game is he needs to be that kind of Selke, really solid 2-way forward where he can play on your first power play unit and he's one of your first penalty killer, where he can take offensive zone draws and he can take defensive zone draws. He needs to be your number 1 center and he needs to be your team captain. That's what he needs to be. If you want to call that Patrice Bergeron, you can. Now, I think it would be a little too much to ask for Bergeron. Bergeron was a very good offensive player, but that's what I think with the 5th pick, his ceiling hopes to be to me, which is a Selke type player. A very, very, very good 2-way forward. Lauren says coaches like Barry Trotz love the 100% effort players because it allows them to be lazy in one aspect of their job, which is getting the most effort out of a player. Now, I think that is very simplistic. Here's what I would say. Let's use Joe Hansen as the example. Anytime somebody tells you that the compete level of Brady Martin is not worth taking, just remember Ryan Johansson. And I don't mean this to be rude when it comes to Ryan Johansson. I don't want to pull the scab of Ryan Johansson. He's probably going on about his life, living it however he wants. And that's his business, not mine. But I think we all know when it comes to Johansson, he left a little meat on the bone. Yeah, he played, but did he play hard all the time? Was he committed to the game? And I'm just going to tell you, the sentiment is no, he was not committed to the game. So whenever you say, well, I don't care about the 100% effort, the coach should be able to get 100% effort out of everybody. Well, John Tortorella couldn't get 100% effort out of Joe Hansen. Peter Laviolette couldn't get 100% effort out of Joe Hansen. John Hines couldn't get 100% effort out of Joe Hansen. Nathan McKinnon last year apparently got so pissed off with Joe Hansen, he ran his ass out of there. And then the Philadelphia Flyers just waived him and then terminated his contract. So I understand the idea of saying, like, hey, coaches like the effort players because it allows them to be lazy and not have to work so hard to motivate the player, which is somewhat like there's a little truth in that. But I mean, your desire to be great in anything in life is really going to be about your self-motivation. It's like getting an education. You can go to the worst public school, but if you grind in the books, you'll be able to go to college. You can go to the worst public university. If you work hard, you'll be successful. You can go to Harvard and be a moron. It does work that way. One texter says, terrible trade, terrible extension. And to make it even worse, the Predators are retraining salary. Way to go, Barry Trotz, a trifecta of suck. JD in Brentwood says, we all have guys in our fantasy leagues who are consistently making trades just for the sake of doing something. It seems like Barry Trotz is doing the same. I think with Barry Trotz, what's odd is it feels like he makes moves that when we just take the one move and explain it in real time, you can argue that that's a good move. And I use the Dante Fabro release as an example. Dante Fabro was on an expiring contract. This team was up against the cap. He was being scratched. It didn't look like he was going to get into the lineup anytime soon. So they waived him. They drafted him in the first round. He gave him some good moments, but really, Fabro was a third-pair defenseman who, as we talk about meat on the bone, I think left a little bit there. The way I described it is he signed out of college, Boston U, and went right into the lineup as a third-pair defenseman in the last game of the year. I believe it was a home game against Chicago on a Saturday night, and scored. And I'm not sure that Dante Fabro got 1 ounce better as a Nashville Predator from that day that he showed up out of college to when they released him. Well, then he goes to the Columbus Blue Jays and he plays well, so now everybody's crying about it. That's not the part that bothers me. What bothers me is if you're going to dump Alexander Carrier a month later, then you probably shouldn't release Dante Fabro because you need a right shot defenseman. So when it comes to Trotz, again, each individual move, I guess you can explain. But when you put them together in the totality of what he's doing, it doesn't really seem to make any sense. It's like, today, I think I'm going to do this. Tomorrow, I think I'm going to do that. That's what it feels like. Trotz comes on the program, and he talks about, I'm going to start our rebuild. He said that to me last year around Thanksgiving. He said he's going to start the rebuild if these older players didn't get it together by Christmas. So he moves off of Carrier, and he moves off of Fabro, and he moves off of Tommy Novak, and he moves off of some of these kind of like bottom six, bottom pair kind of guys. Scott Wedgwood, the backup goalie. And now he's telling me, well, we're trying to win next year. Wait a minute. What happened? I'm going to start our rebuild. And then he says things like, you're going to see the young players. We're going to bring the young players up. We're going to bring David Edstrom up this year. Well, if you're bringing David Edstrom up, you're not going to try to win this year. So again, I can understand if you were to just take the move and say, okay, this is the move. Here's the move right here. Okay, I can explain this one move. But then when you put it into the context of everything else, it's harder and harder to understand. I'm going to start our rebuild. So why are you trading for Eric Holla? Eric Holla sucks. And you're giving up a pick to get him? That's what I have a hard time with. I don't play fantasy football, but I bet there's probably in every league some guy that just makes trades that make you say, wait, time out, what? And that's starting to happen now. 615-737-1025. Now, as you know, with the NFL, we do the draft show. And everybody loves the Jared Stillman lifetime reactions. Obviously, we had the draft show for hockey on the other night. Max and Robbie, I would say, are far more qualified to be doing that draft show than I am. But I will tell you what my reaction was on Friday night when they made that pick. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
The Predators pick is in at 5th overall.
Oh my God, here we go.
Here's Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Here we go.
Nashville Predators, one of Smashville's all-time greats, and a 2024 inductee into the Hockey Hall of Fame. I give you Shea Weber.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here making the Nashville Predators' first selection. What a big day for these young athletes. Just the start's beginning for them. So, I mean, there's a journey ahead of you, and I want to wish you guys all the best of luck. I want to say hi to all the fans at Bridgestone. I know you guys probably aren't having any fun. I miss you guys. What a place to play. With that, with the 5th overall selection, the Nashville Predators in the 2025 NHL entry draft select from the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, Brady Martin.
Brady Martin is the Predators' pick at 5th overall. Not one of the 2 who we expected, but one of the top players in the draft. He was ranked as the number 11 North American skater, but he's been ranked higher than that, and he was a player that was heavily rumored to go 4th overall to Utah. So Brady Martin from the Sioux, who is not at the draft because he is on his farm in Ontario, too busy choring to be there. The good Canadian boy, Brady Martin, is your newest Pred.
This guy's a savage. He's a, if you want to.
It's one of your guys too, Mace. Mace was talking about him. He was all fired up about him.
Yeah, but he's a guy that's if you want to talk about guys that's like a cut in the mold of a Kachuk, Brady or Matthew. He's got skill. He's more of a straight line player, I would say, than a creator. The guy hits everything that moves, and he's an absolute savage. You know, again, we're talking, it's tough to pass up a James Hagen's type of a skill set, but you're getting a different kind of element to the game. The guy can score. He's not, I wouldn't say the biggest playmaker or creator or driver, but he's a guy, he's going to get things done. So this is the identity I think the Predators wanted to go for.
There you go. That was Chris Mason Friday night when the pick went down on the draft show. And so, again, that is a Predators entity. Although I almost got to do a post-game show last year. And then we all, Jake, last minute thought that Lindsay might be going into labor. So I believe you were the one that did the post-game show that night.
I believe it was. Yeah, that was, I think they played Tampa. So we got through that one fast.
Yeah, that's a bummer that I didn't get to do a post-game show. And I don't think you guys have noticed this. They try to keep me as far away from the Predators entities, you know, on the program, whether it's the pregame show, the postgame show, the draft show, Smashville Live. You think they're ever going to like, hey, come on out. The players who Jared says stinks will be sitting down with Jared and Hal Gill, and Hal Gill will slug Jared across the jaw at some point, you know. So, you know. So this was me Friday night. Because I know that people love it when I lose my mind over the Titans picks. So I'm watching the draft, this freaking Mickey Mouse NHL draft. I mean, I don't like the way that they do it normally when the whole organization walks up there like they won an Oscar and they say, you know, oh yeah, we want to thank our scouting directors and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And congratulations to the Florida Panthers. And we want to give a shout out to all our friends back home at Smashville. The Nashville Predators select Johnny Joseph with the third. I can't stand any of that anyways. But what I could not stand was Gary Bettman going up there and being like, and up next, we have with us international recording artist, Lanaya. And it's like, what? God, it was awful. So, I'm watching this Mickey Mouse draft, and Bettman goes up there and they bring in Shea Weber on Zoom or whatever, the FaceTime, whatever it was. And, well, hold on, let me get back. Utah's on the clock. And we had heard Utah's going to trade the pick to the Islanders over and over and over again. Betting odds were saying Hagens is going at 4 to the Islanders. So I'm waiting. And I see at the bottom screen, the pick is in. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, the pick is in. Here we go. Utah's making the pick. Please don't take Hagens. And when they took Denoyer, first of all, Tony Finau never shut the hell up. Could you have picked a more irrelevant golfer to make pick for the Utah team than Tony Finau? And he never shut the hell up. He just kept talking, and he did that obnoxious chant that I've never heard of. So now you're on the clock. And Hagens is there. And it's my dad and my girlfriend and I. My kid is asleep with my mom in the room over. And the Predators are on the clock. And I just put on my phone, Lee Greenwood, proud to be an American. And I just start waving my hand in the air, singing it, knowing that the Predators are going to draft James Hagens. So Bettman comes out, the pick is in. I've now put my phone down because I don't like the tipping of picks. So my phone is in my pocket, and I am sitting there watching the draft with bated breath. And Shea Weber says Brady Martin. And again, I predicted before we went off the air on Friday night, I predicted that the Predators were going to take Brady Martin because I thought the Islanders were going to trade up to 4 and take James Higgins. And when Shea Weber mentioned whatever it was that wasn't Boston College, I said, oh no. Oh no. Brady Martin. And I just sat down in the chair. And I didn't say anything. I just sat there and stared at the TV. And my girlfriend was like, Jared. And I just stood there looking at the TV. My mouth was just open. I was just speechless. I don't think my dad was surprised. I think a lot of people think that I just always have one gear and that is crazy. But in this case, I wasn't shocked. I was just so disappointed. Not that Brady Martin's some bum, but they had the opportunity to take a number one center. And I say number one center, somebody with the offensive skill of a potential number one center. And they didn't. They took a guy who competes hard, which again isn't nothing, but a 6'3" winger who might score 40 goals in the NHL. They didn't take him. And I just sat there. And I did not say a word. Again, my girlfriend was like, Jared? And I just sat there in disbelief with my mouth open. My phone was in my pocket. And I could just feel buzz, 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 buzz. And I just didn't have the words. I don't think I talked until, if you remember, they went to commercial break. Then they came back. Then they brought out Charles Barkley. And I think when I saw Charles Barkley, then I was like, okay, now I can talk again. That was my reaction in live time to the Brady Martin pick. And again, I don't think Brady Martin's some bum. I don't think that this was some just horrendously awful pick or anything like that. Like Brady Martin, I think by a lot of accounts was the 7th or 8th best player in this draft, according to the gurus. How often do we see the 8th best player in the NFL draft go at 5? That's not crazy. But man, I was disappointed. I was disappointed. So sad on Friday night. And I just stood there. Just sat there in the chair, mouth open. Could not believe it. And then the rest of the night was just kind of a sad, mellow, with a little bit of anger in there. Then when the Predators were on the clock later in the night and they started talking about taking a goalie in the first round after they went all in on the goalie they have now who I don't even like, I thought, no. We draft. I understand the idea of draft a guy. It's going to take him 3, 4, 5 years to get to the NHL, but not 8. No. The other two, Cam Reed, Riker Lee, I don't know anything about them. But I just sat there, mouth open. Not that I couldn't believe it. I could believe it. Just disappointed. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. The Athletic gives the Predators a grade that I'm telling you right now, Predator fans are not giving the Preds. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love my friends at Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Have you ever called a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC tech, and felt like they were trying to sell you something that you absolutely, positively did not need? If a deal sounds too good to be true, like a $99 club membership or a $29 tune-up, that is because it is. The reality is they have to find something to fix so they can cover their costs for these quote-unquote discounted club memberships. Unlike the other guys, Hiller never offers deals designed to trick you or sell you something that you do not need. And you hear me talking all the time about my friends at Hiller, but this is why I trust Hiller in my home. So schedule online at happyhiller.com. That's happyhiller.com. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, of Vandy. Hiller, call the Hatfish Truck today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. And again, Preds fans are unhappy with the Brady Martin pick with the 5th overall pick in the draft. Apparently, the development camp starts today. They hit the ice in less than 30 minutes. Robbie Stanley's going to be there. So tomorrow morning, you'll hear Robbie Stanley probably talk about what he saw at development camp, and Brady Martin will be there on the ice. You know, the old story goes that when the Chicago Bulls made the controversial choice of drafting not a center, but Michael Jordan out of North Carolina with the 3rd overall pick, that Rod Thorne, the general manager, got a call from an assistant coach the day after the first practice who said, "Congratulations, you didn't mess this pick up." I am hopeful that Robbie Stanley will say tomorrow morning on Robbie and Rex Road, "You did not mess this pick up." But that being said, Predator fans were angry like I've never seen it before. I was actually a little surprised. I've seen Titans fans anger on a draft night only to an hour later have changed their mind and said, "Well, you know, J.C. Latham was picked. I lost my mind." Titan fans were like, "Jared, what are we doing? Oh my God." And then an hour later, "Well, you know, Bill Callahan says he's the best tackle in the draft. So, I think there's a chance." Uh-huh. Got it. So I went to The Athletic today because I knew they weren't huge fans of the Predators drafting Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick. But they have their draft grades out. I, by the way, think it's so disingenuous that these prospect writers cover every draft for every sport and nobody ever gets below a C. Ever. You will never see somebody get an F when they just flat out fail the draft. Colorado got the lowest grade. I think they actually got a D. And it's like the Athletic was like, "Yeah, we don't really like either guy." Which to me, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, well, okay, so then give him an F. But that's just me. But I saw that they were going in descending order, not by name, alphabetical order, but they were actually going by A+ to A to A-. So with the Predators draft, I had it open on my phone and I just scrolled down thinking, oh yeah, they probably got like a C. Nope. A- according to The Athletic for the Predators draft. I was shocked. Here's what they wrote, quote, "I didn't agree with every decision Nashville made this weekend, but overall I thought the Predators brought in a lot of talent to their farm system. Brady Martin at 5 was high for me. I get the appeal. He's a super likable player with a great backstory, but I thought they left talent on the board. Riker Lee and Jacob Rombach were a bit early for me, but in fairness, I knew that's the range they were going in based on the talks with other teams, so I may be the one off on them. I did like the ranges. They got Cameron Reed and Jack Ivankovic and Alex Wong, though Martin will be a top 6 forward of the future with elite compete level. I would bet they get at least one other regular from this draft and possibly 2, with Reed being the likeliest candidate." I was actually shocked. Again, because the fans would not give the Predators an A- for their draft. And he's saying a couple regulars will come out of this. And I was thinking about it, watching the other picks, watching the Cameron Reed pick, watching the Riker Lee pick. And I'm like, in a given year, and the draft in the NHL, they try to make it a big deal, but it's really not a big deal because these kids are so far away. It's like the baseball draft. It is a big deal as far as whether or not your team's going to be any good. But as far as getting people interested in it, it's not like the NFL. It's just not. Those guys are 24 years old, and they're going to play right away in the NFL, and these guys are going to Saskatoon for a year. But at the same time, I was a little shocked how The Athletic gave you an A- for the whole draft. And again, thinking about Riker Lee and Cameron, like those are first-round picks too. Like those guys might actually matter. And again, let's not act like Brady Martin was 18th on the board and they took him at 5. According to the gurus, he was 7 or 8 on the board. Now, again, I would have taken him at 5. I would have taken Hagen's. But I just was a little surprised. And what I was really surprised by was, again, when it comes to the Titan fans, it's like every move the Titans make, even when it's the stupidest move, Like when they fired Rand Carthon, but said, Chad Brinker's still in charge. We're going to get a new GM. Chad's going to be in some made-up position. He's in charge. We're going to get a new GM, and we're going to keep the coach. And after the Titans hired their new general manager who had no experience and did one press conference, Titan fans were like, Mike Borgonzi, he sees the way. He knows what to do. And with the Preds fans, there was no talking anybody off the ledge on Friday night. The way I felt on Friday night was disappointment with the pick of Martin over Hagens and Martone. Not surprised, because as I said, Jake backed me up on this, as I said on Friday, listening to Scott Wheeler talk about Brady Martin's compete level, I said that just moist Barry Trotz's panties.
That is exactly what you said. And I love that you put that out there on Twitter on Friday night after they made the pick.
Well, it's because he did it. I said, hey, if you know Barry Trotz and you hear that, you know that that's what he, and then he went and did it. I should have known better. I mean, I did predict that they were going to draft Brady Martin. But 20 minutes after Brady Martin was picked, I mean, I'm reading Twitter and I'm like, guys, even I don't like this pick, but stop acting like he's some bum. And again, as much as some of these moves are questionable, and I don't really want to see Eric Hall on the team next year either. And this trade today, again, you got a third pair defenseman from Vegas that everybody's sitting there saying, you did what? For $5.5 million. And Aaron Ekblad just re-signed for $6.1 million. But at least the Athletic gave you an A-. You got to give them that. So we shall see. 615-737-1025 and our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Owen is up next here on our program on the Brady Martin pick. Owen, thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared. Unlike most Predators fans, I get it. He's not Hagens, but I am pretty happy with him. You know, you're going to get a workhorse in Brady Martin. He has skill. He has good size. But I think the people getting outraged, unlike the NFL draft, we don't have a lot of film on these guys. These average Predators fans, they're not going to be watching the film like they do with college players, so we can't initially write them off and say they suck. Most people probably have never watched Brady Martin's film. So I just wanted to know what your, forgetting the Hagen stuff, what is your pure analysis and take in Martin, and do you think he'll be a good guy? Thanks.
Yeah, I will say this. This is what I want to get to next, which is the reason why I think Barry Trotz did this. Like, big picture, the reason why, what I think he envisions. I do want to hit this. 615-737-1025, and then we'll hit your phones. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 The Game.
on Martin, is part of maybe why you wanted him the speed at which maybe he could be at the NHL level? Is that part of it, or you're not worried about that?
No, not really. But I can tell you, he's one of those players that you're gonna come at training camp and you're gonna go, this kid's not coming here just for training camp and development camp. He's coming here to take someone's spot, and he's very capable of it. I just believe that. Probably, we'll let it play out, but knowing his mentality, just watching him in the short time that we got to see him, and everything that the scouting staff has said about him, and like he'll push people out of a job if they're not careful. That's just, I think his mentality is that he comes and brings it every night and practice and in games, and you got to be aware.
Again, what did I say on Friday, Jake?
You said that's Barry Trotz's guy.
Now, what did I say, Jake?
It makes his panties moist. Was that what you said?
It wets it. Brady Martin, we played a cut from Scott Wheeler. Can we get that cut from Scott Wheeler? The one before the draft. Scott Wheeler said this about Brady Martin on the midday show on Wednesday. I played this cut on Friday and said, if you don't know Barry Trotz, I'm telling you, this wets his panties.
Then there was another name that I'll add to the list that I heard after my mock draft dropped yesterday, and that's Brady Martin's name. And Brady is really in that mix from 4 to 7, an ultra competitor who would fit with Zachary LaRue and some of the other players that the Predators have drafted and brought into the organization in recent years. But Martin maybe doesn't have the high-end skill or the high-end point production projectability that a player like Porter Martone or James Haggins has. But what Brady Martin does have is sort of the motor that never stops, the most physical player in the draft, the most competitive player in the draft, the fiercest competitor in the draft. Use whatever cliche you want. That's sort of Brady Martin's identity.
Okay. And then Trotz took him, and then Trotz said the exact same thing. So the caller in the last segment said, Jared, forget about, watching a highlight here, the fans that are going crazy there, what do you think? I believe Barry Trotz thinks he just drafted his next captain. Roman Yossi's contract is up in 2028, 2029. So in the spring of 2028, Roman Yossi's contract will be up. I believe Barry Trotz believes at that point Brady Martin will be wearing the C for the Nashville Predators. And that level of compete that Brady Martin has as the first line center of the Predators, and I think he expects David Edstrom to slot in behind as the second line center, and I think he probably expects Matthew Wood to be up on the first line and Joakim Kimmel to be up on the second line or something like that, and that he envisions that everybody will pick it up because Brady Martin, as the captain, will get them to pick it up. Now, I don't know Brady Martin. So this idea that at 17, 18 years old, I can tell you what his personality is like would be ridiculous. But I do wonder, forget about the physical stuff and the fact that he finishes his checks. I can get that in the 4th round. But can he get all the other guys to be as competitive as him? Because if he can do that, then that leader that we're talking about, that does matter now. I was thinking about this today in terms of quarterbacks. And when it comes to quarterbacks, we all want the guy that can sling it. We all want the guy who's accurate. We all want the guy who's athletic. And we understand that a guy like Mahomes or Josh Allen has a special talent. But what about the guy like Joe Burrow? Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence were not considered similar talents coming out. Trevor Lawrence was considered a special talent. But Joe Burrow, like Barry Trotz, Joe Burrow's got that it factor. So that's what I think Barry Trotz thinks he's getting, is that it factor. Which, again, it's amazing to me how Predator fans hear a Barry Trotz cut about talking about, this kid, he's got the it factor. He's the most competitive player in the draft and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's the things you guys love about Cam Ward. I mean, somebody says, Cam Ward shows up at 5 a.m. They're telling you the same thing about the guy they picked. It's like, no, Trotz, he sucks. Which, again, I was upset that they picked him too. Make no mistake about it. But it's crazy how Preds fans cannot get won over by this the way the Titans fans could have gotten one over on it. But again, the texter or the caller said, what do you think Barry Trotz thinks? What do you say? I think Barry Trotz thinks he just drafted his next captain. And then he's like, hey, if I'm going to build this thing, I'm building it around this captain, which I find admirable. But at the same time, this team needs talent. When Scott Wheeler says, well, he doesn't have the high-end point production that James Higgins or Porter Martone have, that's the problem. I need the high-end point production that James Higgins or Porter Martone have. You're not getting high-end point production from Zachary LaRue or from Fedor Svechkov. Fedor Svechkov had 17 points in 50 games last year. You're not getting high point production from him. So I'm going to need it from Brady Martin. And that's why I would have gone with the guys that probably offer up higher point production. 615-737-1025. Dylan in Antioch is up next here on our program. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Dylan, go ahead.
Hey, Jared. I just want to say I went to the draft party at Bridgestone. They did a great job. And when they drafted Brady Martin, it was kind of a collective, it was like, what? It wasn't shock or disbelief, just kind of no one really knew what to make of it. I think this is kind of referendum on Barry Trotz's GMing so far, because if Porter Martone or James Higgins goes off, I don't know if he's going to live it down. And I think this may give Trotz a little more time, because this guy kind of seems more like a work in progress. So I think this may give Trotz a little more grace with the fans, because he has all those intangibles, which are awesome, but the skill is something this team has just never done. And this whole Nick Hague thing, I don't know what to make of it. And okay, so this right hand versus left hand defenseman, I'll just ask a question. This may be a stupid question. So does that mean, is his left hand at the back of the stick or the right hand at the back of the stick? Like, is it a lefty swinging the bat, or how does that work? Because I've been trying to figure that out. And,
so if you're right-handed, you're typically a left shot.
Okay, so a left
shot. Does that make
sense?
sense?
That means you're right.
Here's the way I'll put it to you. Right shots are harder to find than left shots, and the Predators have about 9 left shot defensemen. And I appreciate your call, Dylan. And I would argue one potentially good right shot defenseman, and that's Andrew Gibson. And we don't even know if Andrew Gibson's any good. Again, this is the problem with how Barry Trotz views things versus how everybody else views it. When it comes to Andrew Gibson, Trotz views him, I believe Trotz views down the road. And who knows if Trotz will be calling the shots when it comes time for this. But I believe that Trotz views, just like he views Brady Martin as his first line center and his team captain, I think he views Tanner Mullendijk as his top pair left shot defenseman and Andrew Gibson as his top pair right shot defenseman. Gibson is the only guy in the pipeline that is any good that is a right shot. I'm sorry, but Nick Blankenberg stinks. And Justin Barron, who's a right shot defenseman and a former first-round pick, he was even worse last year. He was the worst player on the team last year. If I never watch him play a hockey game again, I'll never be upset about it. That's all they have. So they're going to have to move some guys over. Like Roman Yossi's going to have to move over to the right side, which I've talked to some people in the league who say Roman Yossi can play the right side, but is an elite player when he's playing at the left side. Make of that what you will. Let's go to William, who's up next here on the program. William, thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. You go ahead.
This is pretty obvious what happened. James Higgins last year was picked to go number 1 overall. He didn't go. Philadelphia didn't pick him. He was a follower, and we picked a riser. It's pretty obvious. If we had picked James Higgins, we would have picked a shorter Cody Glass. This guy is like cardboard vanilla.
What makes you say that, though? Again, I actually ran through his college stats, to your point. I ran through his college stats, and while they weren't as good as, say, Jack Eichel's college stats, and they weren't as good as Macklin Celebrini's college stats, they do somewhat –
he played on a line with 2 former first-round picks from the year before, and he still just barely produced like that.
Barely produced? He was a point-per-game guy.
Contact. Who gets to play with 2 former first-round picks just the year before? Come on, it was a blessing, and you still just do that?
Matt Boldy at Boston College, Matt Boldy had 26 points in 34 games. Hagen's was 37 points in 37 games.
Hey, I'm just telling you, man. The dude, I'm tired of the Cody Glass types that avoid contact and that when they do score a goal, they start crying. Like, dude, act like you've been there before. Why's this dude crying? It's hockey. You scored a goal, and the waterworks. Like, get out of here, man, with this soft stuff.
When did he
Hey,
cry?
if we want to pick them, Philadelphia or Boston would have picked Martin.
Now, I agree with that. So that is one thing I absolutely agree with. William, I appreciate your call. That I agree with because I believe, and I know Martone went with the next pick, I believe that if the Predators, and this is just a gut feeling, I believe that if the Predators had made the pick of James Hagens, then Brady Martin would have been at 6 to Philadelphia, that they would have taken Martin over Martone. I don't know why I feel that way. You know, Keith Jones is their general manager up there. He's kind of an old school guy. I think they would have taken, this is me, Brady Martin. And Brady Martin definitely would have been gone by the 8th pick. I mean, by the 7th pick. Because once you got into that other group of Jake O'Brien and McQueen, and once you got to that group, that was kind of a different trough of players, you know, like Brian Burke says. Gosh, there was this one text into the text line that I wanted to read because I thought it was so funny. And yet I got too busy looking at other texts and I lost it. This one guy was all mad at The Athletic and said that he was never going to support the Predators ever again. And I wish I could find it. One texter into the text line says the Predators took a Mike Fisher over a guy who was more of a scoring threat. That comes from Joey in Bellevue, who says that's why Vegas competes for the cup and Nashville is light years away. You always talk about good run franchises taking advantage of the bad ones. Well, that's what's just happened with the Predators. Adam Vingan sent me a tweet that was like, okay, now that Aaron Ekblad is re-signed in Florida, who's going to be the team that bails the Panthers out of the cap and allows them to re-sign Brad Marchand? And that guy replied, goes, what am I doing? Of course it's going to be Barry Trotz. If that happens, I'm going to lose. I'm going to go nuts. Because it does feel like that's what's happening. Neil says, Preds fans want their cake and eat it too. Overall, the fans don't know hockey players. I mean, again, wasn't something where even the guys in The Athletic are saying, yeah, I would have taken the other guys before I took this guy. And these are guys that do know the players. Lauren says, if the Predators didn't need elite forwards, then it would have been a good draft. But they need 2 forwards better than their current best forwards. And this is a C, as far as I'm concerned, because of their first pick. I mean, to me, I kind of think this draft's going to be defined by the first pick. I mean, think about it. Now, Riker Lee could be a 100-point winger, so maybe add him in there. But no matter how good your defenseman is, he's never going to carry a whole draft. And the same with the goalie. It's all about, in this sport, it's all about scoring goals. It's all about wingers. And really, it's all about first-line centers, too. So the way I view it is this is a success if Brady Martin ends up becoming a Selke finalist on a consistent basis. Your team captain, your number 1 center, and a Selke finalist. Again, not next year, but probably by year 3 or 4, I need some Selkies. I need some votes at least. 615-737-1025. More of your phones on the program. Boy, a lot of people are all fired up. 615-737-1025. Something that I would not have been okay with as far as the first round was concerned. I'm actually not that upset with in the second round. I'll explain. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Craving something fresh and flavorful? Tzatziki's has you covered from juicy chicken kebabs to perfectly grilled salmon. Every bite is bursting with Mediterranean goodness, and don't even get us started on the homemade sauces and dressing. I will say this. I do back that. I love Tzatziki's. I haven't been there in a little bit, but I absolutely love Tzatziki's. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. In fact, you might have to have Tzatziki's tonight. It just kind of hit me just doing that read that I may end up having that opinion. So there's one thing I want to get across here as far as the Predators and the draft was concerned, the goalie. So the Predators had a bunch of second-round picks. Again, I don't think second-round picks are not nothing. Shea Weber was a second-round pick. Roman Josi was a second-round pick. And I believe that when you get to the second round, just take what's the best available, the one that your gut tells you, like, hey, you really like that guy. Probably couldn't convince yourself or other people that you should take him in the first round, but take him in the second round. So they took the goalie. And I don't know anything about the goalie, but I'm okay with that. ESPN, when it came to the second first-round pick the Predators had on Friday night, everybody around the table was like, do you think they'll go goalie here? Yeah. I think they'll go goalie here. What do you think? Do you think they'll go goalie? Yeah, I think they might go goalie. What do you think here? Should they go goalie here? And I'm like, no, you're not using a first-round pick on a goalie when that goalie is going to want to play in the NHL in 3 or 4 years when, again, you just committed to a goalie for the next 8 years. But I don't have a problem with it in the second round because the second round is not the first round. That's the most important thing. The second thing is this. If UC Saros is what I think he is, not what Barry Trotz and not what the Predators and not what Willie and Chris Mason think, with all due respect, not what they all think that Saros is some sort of Pecorine 2.0 who just hasn't had the support in front of him. But if you gave Saros that support, he could win you the cup. They think that. I don't. If Saros is bad or is average or below average or whatever it ends up being, if that's the case, that's going to put the organization in a tough spot. Paying a goalie $7.5 million, or really $7.75 of $1 million every year. How do you get out of it? You have a rookie goalie that in 3 years pops. So you could still pay Saros' money, but you got this young goalie coming up behind him. So it'll probably take 3 or 4 years. Knowing Trotz, he'll be super, super patient with the goalie. He's not going to be patient, it doesn't sound like, with Brady Martin. But knowing Trotz, he'll be super patient with the young goalie, and I don't have a problem with the goalie in the second round. The first round, that would have been an issue. Craig says, would you have taken Hagens because he was the best player available, or would you have taken Hagens because he was the only prospect you knew? I would have taken Hagens. I'm just curious for you. I mean, again, I understand that I'm not Robbie. I'm not Adam Vengen. I'm not Pierre Lebrun. I'm not one of these hockey insiders. I get it. But I'm also not some moron either. Like, to sit there and say, like, oh, well, it was James Hagens the only guy you knew, so that's who you thought they should take? I predicted they were going to take Brady Martin. And the reason I predicted they were going to take Brady Martin is why, Jake?
Because it's Barry Trotz's guy. You made me say it once. I don't think you're going to get me to say it again.
Because his competitiveness wets Barry Trotz's panties. That's what I said on Friday. Again, before the draft, that's what I said. And they took him, and right afterwards, all Barry Trotz could do is talk about his competitiveness. So don't give me you're the only one that knows Hagens because, I told you, I thought they were going to pick this guy. I said they were going to pick him. Now, I thought that was because Hagens was going to go before him. I thought if Hagens was there, then I thought they would have taken Hagens. But again, my prediction at the end of the show was that they were going to take Brady Martin. One texter into the text line says, this roster and draft screams Gavin McKenna. I believe Gavin McKenna is the first overall pick in next year's draft. Is he Connor Bedard's cousin? So I went to the Predators Maple Leafs game with a bunch of Lindsay's Canadian friends. Not to get here and not to be too specific into my own life, but we had decided to give our nephews, who are big hockey fans, we were going to give them tickets for the Preds and the Leafs, and we were going to go to the game when they played here because Leafs tickets in Toronto are like, I don't want to say Taylor Swift tickets, but they're like Beyonce tickets in Toronto. So the Leafs are playing here. We got tickets for the game. So I say, hey, for Christmas, how about we go to the Preds Leafs game? What I didn't know was that when that happened, they had a family trip planned, so they couldn't come anyways. So it ended up being a bunch of Lindsay's Canadian friends and I who went to the game. And one of her friends' husbands is like a huge hockey guy. So I didn't even really know this guy. In fact, I didn't know this guy at all until he showed up at my house and we were all going to the game together. Because again, this is my girlfriend's friend's husband. You've all been there before. You all know what I'm talking about. Jake, I'm not sure if you've been there before, but you will soon enough.
I've been there before.
Okay.
The double dates.
So I don't really know this guy. And it's a group of us or whatever. And I run into Hal Gill at the game. And so I'm talking to Hal for a little bit, whatever, just shooting the breeze with Hal. And this guy, who again, I know he's Canadian, but I don't really know anything about him. He's like, hey, saw you over there chatting up Hal Gill. And I was like, you know Hal Gill? Like, if you know who Hal Gill is, you must be a hockey guy. No disrespect to Hal. You must be a hockey guy if you know who Hal Gill is. And so then throughout the night, I realized, hey, this guy, he freaking knows hockey. It's like sitting next to a Canadian Robbie Stanley, just watching the game. And he told me about Connor Bedard's cousin. And he said that next year, so I'm guessing this is Bedard's cousin. I don't know, a simple Google search could tell me. I'm guessing that this Gavin McKenna is Connor Bedard's cousin. I am not against. If you promised me that you get the number one pick in the draft and that this guy is the real deal, this Gavin McKenna, I would sacrifice next year. The problem is with the lottery system, which I'm not against, but with the lottery system, there's no guarantee that even if you have a year that is worse than last year, there is absolutely no guarantee that you're going to get that first pick. And then on top of it, if you are that bad, it probably means that Brady Martin sucks or doesn't play in the NHL. And I think the way Trotz is talking about it, I think Brady Martin is going to play in the NHL. And so that's not good. And then you're stuck with all these contracts. And if you lose next year, you're not moving any of these guys. And that includes Hague, who you added today, who you gave $5.5 million to, who Robbie and Adam think stink. And who I've never heard of. And the rule is if I've never heard of you, then you stink. Joel says, Robbie and Retro had mentioned that Trotz was trying to move back up to take Roger McQueen. So you could have had McQueen as the potential 1C and Martin as the 2C. And then Anaheim picked McQueen. Let me say this. If you viewed McQueen as your 1C, then you take him with and you view Martin as your 2C, then you take McQueen at 5. I will say this. So I don't think that's what he viewed it as. I think he wanted to really take a shot on Roger McQueen. And I get it. That said, I absolutely believe when I saw that EJ Raddick interview on the NHL Network on Saturday, during the latter parts of the draft where he was like, I was on the phone and I thought I had a deal, but then he got drafted. I was like, that's McQueen. He's talking about McQueen. That's what he's talking about. 615-737-1025. More phones. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Plus, there's just something I have to get off my chest about the draft as a whole. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 1025-1063. The game this September, Tim McGraw will be performing at Trinix Rock the Cradle in Nashville, a meaningful event supporting newborns and moms at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown. Let me say this, man. As somebody who had a kid at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown, as somebody that knows, all about how they do things there, get your tickets now at rockthecradlenashville.org as Tim McGraw will be performing again at Trinix Rock the Cradle in Nashville, a meaningful event supporting the newborns and the moms at the Ascension St. Thomas Midtown.
let's go to the draft house.
Mace, what's up?
How's it going, Mike?
Good. Well, congrats, man.
Thank you very much.
Super happy to have you. Welcome. We went through this process. You had an
NHL draft house as the Bruins get their guy Sam Neely and Don Sweeney.
To follow when Happy Gilmore welcomes your player to the organization, but why don't you guys say hello to James Hagens?
Thank you for picking me.
I think we might have some technical difficulties, but
Go ahead, Bucci. Sorry.
Draft house time.
this choice and the newest member of the organization. Maybe having a little technical difficulties over there in Ottawa. How are you feeling right now? What was going through your mind as you made the walk up to the stage?
What a freaking clown show was that NHL draft on Friday night. I am somebody who likes the NHL. I am somebody who, again, I get why the NHL Stanley Cup ratings were down so low. It's a Canadian team, and Florida, there's no buzz. Nobody cares about the Florida Panthers. It's not like the Rangers or anything like that. And I'm still ashamed that the ratings were as low as they were because I love the NHL. I do. I love hockey. Now, do I love it as much as Claude in Montreal? No, I don't. But I like hockey. And I want hockey to do well. I want more people to be hockey fans. I want to be able to talk hockey on Mad Dog Radio, on Sirius XM, which during the Four Nations Face-Off I was able to do, and I had Kenny Albert on the show, at one point. But it still was kind of like, So Friday night, obviously my focus was on the Predators and who they were going to pick. And all the other stuff was just, window dressing, and it could have been the best draft. And it wouldn't have mattered to me one way or another. And I wouldn't be sitting here today saying, wow, what a great presentation by the NHL to resurrect Johann Sebastian Bach and have him play as the players walked up to the stage or anything like that. But we got to talk about how much of a freaking clown show that draft was on Friday night. And don't give me this talk about the decentralized draft. The way it used to be is all the general managers, all the coaches, all the scouts, each team has this massive table. It's like the dinner table, the Corleone household. And there's 32 of these in the middle of the arena. And then fans just sit there in the stands, including players who then walk out and go up to the stage when they get drafted. And I don't like the fact that they bring everybody from the table up there to make the pick. I would just prefer, if you're going to do that, just bring one guy up there. And then they always say something like, we want to give a shout out to the Florida Panthers, and we want to thank all of our fans that are watching back home in St. Louis, and we want to thank the Blues Memorial such and such, and we want to thank our assistant general manager and our scouts and our coaches just to make the pick. So this time everybody was at home. This is a one-off. Next year will be back to the way it was. But instead of having the whole organization go up and make the pick because the whole organization was at home, Gary Bettman goes up to the podium. And instead of Gary Bettman making the pick, Gary Bettman turns to the screen and we bring in Johnny Joe on Zoom to make the pick. Shea Weber on a golf course. Like, oh, I'm sorry. When I heard that they were bringing Shea Weber, I thought what that meant was Shea Weber was going to walk up to the podium and make the pick. Not Shea Weber was going to zoom in with his AirPods in. And then that freaking draft house where the woman leads the player up to the screen to talk to the team that just drafted him. Like, dude, don't you think that's kind of a private thing? Hey, man, we just drafted you with the 4th overall pick. We believe in you, but hey, the work starts now, blah, blah, blah. Instead, we're going to have this be public? That was so stupid. And it really cheapens the product. Like I said this on Twitter, and I mean it. Somebody should be fired for how bad the presentation of the NHL draft was Friday night. Because it cheapens the sport when you have a draft like that. And here's what I cannot get over. First of all, I saw people saying, hey, this isn't the NHL's fault. It's the team's fault. The teams voted 26-6 to have a decentralized draft. Well, all the other sports have decentralized drafts too, and they don't seem to have these massive clown shows that the NHL had the other day. The second thing was, when it comes to the drafts and the picks and everything else, why can't Bettman just announce the picks? With the 5th pick in the draft, the Nashville Predators select from Saskatoon, Brady Martin. And here comes, although Brady is not here to accept this award on his behalf, will be me. But why can't Bettman just announce the picks? And they had some really lame celebrities up there. I mean, like, why is George Kittle? I got to say, and I mean this with all due respect, and I know this is going to, this might piss people off. That's fine. I'm just telling you. Couldn't get a Titan? Like, I know George Kittle and Philip Forsberg are friends. I get it. And I know George Kittle's a big deal. I get it. And I know George Kittle lives here. I get it. But we in Nashville, we root for the Titans. We don't root for the 49ers. And then Jordan Davis got up there. And again, I couldn't pick out Jordan Davis from a jar of Vicks. And that has nothing to do with Jordan Davis, but that has everything to do with how much little music I listen to. And yet, when he got up there and said, you know, help and bring the cup back to Smashville, I thought, yeah, we've never won the cup here in Smashville, so it may be hard to bring it back. So, again, that's my gripe with the presentation Friday night. I thought it was a freaking clown show. That draft house was so embarrassing. What a clown show. 615-737-1025 here on the program. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. One texter says, this is Justin, after hearing what a ridiculous circus it was, I'm glad I was listening to the coverage on 1025 instead of bothering to watch that nonsense. I have to say this. I think I can say this, and I mean this with all due respect. Jake, is all due respect noted?
We got it back here.
Okay. So, first of all, my son, anytime he's in the car, and I don't want to brag because I've got a friend who's got a newborn who, as soon as he's in the back of the car, just starts wailing. My son's really not like that. Once he's in the back of the car, he usually falls asleep pretty much every time. And let me knock on wood because we want to keep it that way. But I was driving home and I was listening to our coverage and they had Brooks Bratton on. And I love Brooks, but they had Brooks Bratton on. And so when I got home, I took a picture of my son dead ass asleep in his car seat. And I sent it to Brooks's brother-in-law. And I said, hey, Brooksy just putting the kids to sleep over here. And I hope that message got through to Brooks. That said, I did enjoy our coverage. And I did fire off an angry tweet on Friday night that I don't regret, but I did enjoy it. And it was the ESPN coverage. But by the way, I left something out of me complaining about the draft and the draft house and the process and the presentation and everything else. ESPN's commentary on the draft Friday night. Like, Jake, were you back here listening to our coverage or were you watching ESPN?
No, I was watching on ESPN. It was not good.
Commentary was awful. Like Weeks and Kaplan and the other woman and Buchagros, like it was so disjointed. They didn't really talk about the teams. They didn't really I don't need like Weeks up there or Kaplan up there if they're not going to know anything about these teams. Like, get people who know what they're talking about up there. Now, I don't watch a lot of ESPN's football draft coverage because we're doing our own draft show, and I'm not necessarily interested in what Booger McFarland has to say anyways, but I thought that the commentary on the broadcast on Friday night, I thought that was awful. The other thing I will say, when it comes to the picks, and maybe they did try and they couldn't get it, so maybe I'm speaking out of church here. Wouldn't it have been cool if Cam Ward made one of the picks? Like if the Predators had Cam Ward and Cam Ward, although he didn't play for the Predators, but, you know, something like that. I think it would have been better than Kittle. That's just me. 615-737-1025 here on our program, 615-737-1025. So I think that I would not have picked Brady Martin with the 5th overall pick in the draft. And a lot of the moves Barry Trotz has been making lately, when you add them all up, have me saying, what is going on around here? It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But there is one thing that I absolutely have to push back on. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, one. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. So there is one thing that I do have to address, and that is something that, trust me, I was disappointed on Friday night too. I was disappointed. I watched the first pick, no surprise, Matthew Schaefer. I watched the second pick. There was some talk there on ESPN, though I've already complained about the talking heads there about, could this be Anton Frondell with the second pick? And I'm like, Lord help me if Michael Misa ends up a Blackhawk. And it was not. It was Michael Misa. And then Anton Frondell, as expected, went number 3. And then here came number 4. And we had all heard throughout the day the Islanders were being told, you got to get to 4. We heard a report that the Islanders and their owner, he was willing to do whatever in order to get to number 4 to take James Higgins. And I wanted Higgins. And if not Higgins, probably Porter Martone. Maybe Caleb Denoyer if he was there. So I sat there with bated breath. And Tony Finau, that golfer, made the pick for the Utah Mammoth. And I waited, and he wouldn't shut up. And finally, he said with that pick, they were going to take Caleb Denoyer. And I got up and I said, yes, yes. And I started singing Proud to Be an American, thinking that the Nashville Predators, in the search for the great number 1 center that they have never had, were going to take the American James Higgins. And as we waited, Gary Bettman went to the podium. And because unlike all the other sports where in the first round the commissioner reads the card, Gary Bettman sent it to Shea Weber, who was dialing in on Zoom. And I don't know if he unmuted his mic at the beginning or not. I kid. And Shea Weber said with the 5th pick, the Nashville Predators select, and I was waiting for it, and I heard one of those Canadian cities. We all know they all kind of sound the same. Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, Sakanoya, whatever. And I knew it wasn't Higgins. And then I heard Brady Martin. And I just dropped. My mouth opened. And I just sat. For like 5 minutes, I just sat there with my mouth open. Didn't say a word until Charles Barkley came on to make the next pick after a commercial break. So I was upset. Make no mistake about it. And I would not have made that pick of Brady Martin. I would have picked James Higgins, as we all know. But I wasn't surprised that that's what Barry Trotz did. And yet I have to talk about the fan reaction to this pick because I thought the fan reaction was a little ridiculous. And that even comes from somebody like me who was disappointed that Martin was the pick over Higgins. The sentiment on social media when it came to the Predator fans on Friday night was that the Predators went totally off the board and took somebody who was absolutely, positively not worthy of the 5th overall pick. They took a guy who was ranked as the 7th best player. And when it comes to ranked as the 7th best player, the question has to be ranked by whom? And let's remove the first 4 players in the draft, which now leaves us with probably 4 more. Higgins, McQueen, Martone, and Martin. Well, what if one guy doesn't have the heart and the Predators realized that and talked to a coach and the coach said, yeah, he's really what if one guy doesn't have the back like Roger McQueen? Though we'll get to him in a second. What if one guy doesn't have the back like Roger McQueen? Take him out, okay. You have to take the best option to you. It's not as if Brady Martin was in a trough towards the end of the first round and the Predators said, we believe in him. The last time Predator fans got excited about where somebody was ranked as far as what the gurus thought, it was Ellie Tolvanen, who was ranked high in 2017 and fell to them with the second to last pick in the first round. Point being, Brady Martin was not some sort of off the radar, off the board pick. He absolutely was in the discussion. According to Brian Burke, who I actually met at a wedding last month, of all things, according to Brian Burke, he apparently says players go in troughs. The way it worked out in this draft, the first trough was Matthew Schaefer in a class by himself. Number 2 was Misa and Frondell. Number 3 in that trough, according to the people that would know, Hagens, Martone, Desnoyers. Then the next trough was Brady Martin and with Victor Eklund, Jake O'Brien, Roger McQueen, those guys to kind of round out the top 8 or 9 picks in the draft. Now, I believe when you're picking that high, it's because you stink and you need to take a swing at the most talented player. I don't think they did. I think they took the most competitive player. But to act as if they went and took Austin Watson or they took Colton Sissons is a little ridiculous. And I agree with James Hagens. He kind of represented that number 1 center the Predators have never had and the opportunity to take him. And the Predators took somebody that has less upside. But they still expect Brady Martin to be their number 1 center. It wasn't like they took a goalie with the 5th pick. It wasn't like they took a defenseman with the 5th pick. And so to all the fans out there that just think, what were they doing? This is crazy. I remember when the Raiders took Darius Hayward-Bay ahead of Michael Crabtree in the 2009 NFL draft. And I remember sitting there and it was like the Raiders select Darius Hayward-Bay, wide receiver out of Maryland. And I remember being on the draft stage that night at Nissan Stadium, or not Nissan Stadium, downtown, when the then Las Vegas Raiders, I think they might have been Oakland at the time. I think it was the last year's the Oakland Raiders. When the then Oakland Raiders took Cleveland Ferrell with the 4th overall pick in 2019, I was like, what? And so let's not get too carried away and act as if the Predators drafted the 50th overall prospect in this draft with the 5th pick. They drafted at worst the 7th or 8th prospect in this draft. So you got to be fair, okay? Is this a pick that I would have made? No, I would have taken Hagens. Was it my second choice? No, I would have taken Martone. Why? Because I believe the way you win in the NHL is by putting the little black puck in the little white net. I don't think you win cups by out-toughing people. I don't think the Florida Panthers out-toughed you. I think the Florida Panthers just have a lot of talent. And before you tell me, well, Brady Martin, he profiles to be like a Sam Bennett, right. And the Predators need an Alexander Barkov before they need a Sam Bennett. But Sam Bennett's no bum either. So maybe just bring it down a notch a little bit with the criticism. Again, I didn't like the pick. I thought it was Barry Trotz, the coach, making a Barry Trotz pick, saying, this is my guy. But at the same time, it wasn't as if they went completely insane. And Barry did something. He talked about it after the fact that I didn't like. I can't remember if it was in his interview with EJ Raddick or if it was his interview with the media after on Friday night. But he was like, and according to some of the other clubs we talked to, I mean, they had Brady Martin pegged right where we had him pegged. Okay, Ran, I don't need I got a text message from a general manager who said you stole my pick. I don't need that. But Brady Martin was not some bum. Brady Martin was not considered to be the 28th best player in this draft who they went Leroy Jenkins and picked 5th. Again, I would have picked him, and I don't like the trade they made today, but let's not get too carried away. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Apparently, Mitch Marner has now officially been traded from Toronto to Vegas. Somebody has to explain to me how it is every year. The Las Vegas Golden Knights trade for every good player. Jack Eichel was on the market. I was told, can't have him. They traded for him. Noah Hannafin was on the market. They traded for him. Mark Stone was on the market. They traded for him. Thomas Hertl was on the market. They traded for him. And now Mitch Marner is on the market, and they traded for him and signed him to a $12 million a year deal. Somebody has to explain this to me, how this works. Is it as simple as you just keep taking the players they don't want? Cody Glass, like Jonathan Marchessault, like Nick Hague, who they acquired today. Somebody has to explain how Vegas gets all these good players every year. Every year, there's a top guy available. He ends up in Vegas. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones. Plus, Barry Trotz said it. I don't know if I believe it, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're going to force it. I'll explain. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025. What is the game?
On Martin, is part of maybe why you wanted him the speed at which maybe he could be at the NHL level? Is that part of it, or you're not worried about that?
No, not really. But I can tell you, he's one of those players that you're gonna come at training camp and you're gonna go, this kid's not coming here just for training camp and development camp. He's coming here to take someone's spot, and he's very capable of it. I just believe that. Probably, we'll let it play out, but knowing his mentality, just watching him in the short time that we got to see him, and everything that the scouting staff has said about him, and like he'll push people out of the job if they're not careful. That's just, I think his mentality is that he comes and brings it every night and practice and in games, and you got to be aware.
Translation from Barry Trotz: Brady Martin's going to be on the team next year. And I am skeptical of wanting Brady Martin on the Predators next year, simply because I heard Craig Button say on TSN that no player in this year's draft is ready to play right in the NHL right away. And usually when it comes to the draft, the guys that play right away are the guys that go 1 or 2 overall. But Brady Martin, Trotz just has a freaking Woody for Brady Martin. And I think the other thing is, I do think that Trotz is going to feel the need to prove that he made the right pick. And so here's how I view the options with Brady Martin. Ultimately, I think Trotz believes that Brady Martin will be the number 1 center of the Predators and will eventually be the captain of the team, which means that he's going to wear the captain's patch or whatever. This year, because of Martin's toughness, I think they're going to start Brady Martin as their second line center. So when they go to camp, maybe he doesn't start the first day as their second line center. Lawrence Taylor started practice on the third team, had 1 play, then he moved up to the second team, had 1 play, and then he went up to the first team, and Lawrence Taylor never saw the second or the third team ever again. I think Brady Martin is going to be the second line center for the Predators. And I think the Predators are going to say, you know what? He's so tough, and he's so determined, and he's so smart, and he's such a grinder, and Steven Stamkos and Michael Bunting are going to love it, so he's playing with them. So if you're filling out the top 6 right now, just based off Trotz's comments of, I think he's going to come in here and take somebody's job, I'm going to tell you, Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Marchessault on one line. You don't want Marchessault playing on a line with O'Brien or with Martin, because he'll go crazy. Stamkos, Martin, Bunting on the second line. Haula, Evangelista, and Svechkov on the third line. And then, Michael McCarron and Cole Smith and whomever on the LaRue on the fourth line. I wouldn't, just based off of what I heard, again, from Craig Button, who's TSN's draft guru, I wouldn't put Brady Martin in the NHL right away. I think what I'd do, because I believe that Barry Trotz views the top 6 of the Predators in the future being some combination of Martin is the number 1 center, Edstrom is the number 2 center, Wood on one of the wings, Kimmel on the other second line wing on the left wing, and then, I don't know, Reed Schaefer, I guess, would be on one of the right wings. And then my guess is that Forsberg would still probably fit in there at some. I think I would start Martin at Milwaukee. I think if you really believe that he is the top guy, the future number 1 center of the Predators, and you think he's the captain, send him to Milwaukee, where Ryan O'Reilly's brothers, they're going to be there for his 19th straight season, and put him on the first line along with Kimmel or along with Wood, and let him grow and let him get some success in professional hockey, and then call him up to the Preds if you want. But I'm just telling you, based on the way Trotz was talking, based on the way that Trotz says they need to win now, based on the fact that their second line center as of right now is Fedor Svechkov, and he's not very good, I think Brady Martin's going to be the second line center for the Nashville Predators. Just calling it now. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. One texter says, I will be absolutely shocked if Brady Martin plays next year. does not fit Trotz's MO, but he may force it like you're saying. But let's solo our role. Even if Trotz puts him on the roster, they'll bury him with McCarron and Smith. The Preds management is an absolute dumpster fire. Just watch other organizations that have competent general managers. I mean, I think my thing is when it comes to the general managers and I look at the other teams, I feel like the other teams keep taking advantage of you. It's like Jersey wanted to get out of the Eric Halla thing. What did they do? They dumped him on you and you gave him a pick. Vegas needs to get rid of a defenseman because he's going to make $5.5 million to be on the third pair. So they get your $2 million third pair defenseman. They get Colton Sissons at $1.5 million to play in the bottom six. So they can go give Mitch Marner $12 million. That's what bothers me. Glenn says, you're right, Jared. How does Vegas trade for every single good player when the Predators just seem to look around for cheap or old players that are past their prime? All the teams I will root for will never win a championship. And it is so undeniably sad. Again, it's a downstretch. Been through times where it looked like the Titans were for sure going to win the Super Bowl or the Predators were for sure going to win the Cup. Now, they've done it. But I've been through those moments where it looks like they're going to win it and they don't win it. And so I slow your roll down on, hey, they'll never be any good. But I would say right now, I don't love it. Mark in Ashland City says Brady Martin will play 5 to 9 games to start, and then he will be sent back to junior hockey. That way they won't burn a year of his contract, and he can develop more. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I may be mistaken, I haven't looked this up, I think it's 8 games. I think it's 8 games that you're allowed to play in the NHL before you burn a year or don't burn a year. My guess would be Martin will start the beginning of the year for the first 8 games with the big club, and he'll probably be their second center. Like, he's probably the second best center on the team right now behind O'Reilly, that they'll probably keep him. Again, that's just a hunch, just my gut. One texter says, the only decent right-hand defenseman left is Brent Burns, and I don't know about a 40-year-old defenseman with a beard. Is Cody Ceci not still out there? I mean, I agree with you that the right-shot defensemen all stink that are left now, and all the guys I want. Rasmus Anderson, who I've been talking about, sounds like he's going to Vegas. I mean, again, Vegas gets every good player. I don't understand. I don't get it, etc. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on our program. We'll get to more of your phones here on Stillman and Company. And again, the trade. The trade. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
the Nashville Predators making an overnight trade, which has since been made official. The Predators traded Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon to the Vegas Golden Knights for left-handed defenseman Nick Hague and a conditional third-round pick. The condition on that pick is that it becomes a second-round pick if the Vegas Golden Knights win 2 rounds in the 2026 Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, at the time, Derek, when the reporting was coming out that this trade was being made, it was Colton Sissons and Jeremy Lauzon for Nick Hague. And Nick Hague was being signed to a 4-year contract with a $5.5 million cap hit. And when I saw that, I said, this trade doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And now that it's out that the Predators are also getting a conditional third-round pick in the deal because they are retaining half of Colton Sissons' salary, it makes me feel a smidge better. I emphasize that word, smidge better.
There you go. That was Vengen. And I'm just kind of reading up on this Nick Hague stuff. I mean, like the one guy Vengen sent me, Nick Hague acquired and signed for a $4.5 million deal by Nashville as a very large third-pair defenseman who clears the crease, sometimes drops the gloves, and spends as little time with the puck as he possibly can. Doesn't that sound like a young Luke Shen? Nick Hague traded to Nashville and signs, this is AFP Analytics, which is followed by Willie, so make of that what you will. Nick Hague traded to Nashville and signs a 4-year, $5.5 million per year contract. Good on him and his agent. We can oftentimes come up with comps to justify a deal, even if we don't agree with them. We couldn't here. The acquisition cost plus the contract is really questionable for the team. Now, maybe they caught wind that he and Marchessault are good buddies, or that he can keep Marchessault in line, and maybe that's part of the reason for the money. But I think I'd rather just trade Marchessault back to Vegas than take on Nick Hague and see if he can keep Marchessault in line, if that's in fact what they were doing or why they did it. Greg Wyshynski says the cost of acquisition for Nick Hague was fine. I think he'll make them tougher to play against at 5-on-5 like everyone else. I think the AAV on the new deal is crazy, but Trotz is hoping that a rising cap plus new assistant coach Luke Richardson would be helping Hague find another level, make it sane. Here's what I'd say. If you think Luke Richardson can take Nick Hague up to a level that he'd be worth $5.5 million, then pay him $2 million, and when he makes $5 million, you'll look really smart. Well, the cap's going up. I guess the cap's not going up in Florida, where Aaron Ekblad, who is the first pair right shot defenseman for the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, is going to make $6.1 million, while Nick Hague is going to make $5.5 million. So like Adam said, hey, the draft pick in return, make it a smidge better, but that's about it. 615-737-1025 here on the program. If you want to weigh in, one texter into the text line says, ever since the Luke Shin flip by Pittsburgh, I could tell Trotz was going to be the guinea pig for every general manager in the league. This has become fleece central, and there has to be more trades that are coming down the pipe. I mean, between the Fabro thing, again, the Predators are looking so desperately for a top or second pair right shot defenseman. And I'm not going to pretend to know what Dante Fabro did or didn't do when he was with the Columbus Blue Jackets this year, although I heard he played on their top pair with Zach Werenski. And I'm like, okay, if you need this defenseman, he's $4.5 million, why'd you waive him? And at that point, when somebody else like that goes somewhere, then don't you have to consider changing the coach? I mean, I guess they changed the defensive coach, so maybe that's their thought. But I don't know. I think that, again, ever since the Sorrow signing, it feels like a lot of decisions they made haven't made a lot of sense. Sean says that Cody Ceci is awful. Remove him from your talking points. And Barry Trotz is freaking done with David Poyle's players. So let's stop here for a second. Let's talk about Cody Ceci. All Cody Ceci does is play on the right side for teams that end up in the Stanley Cup final or in the Western Conference final, which is a lot better than you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, before you talk bad about Cody Ceci, and Cody Ceci may not even want to come here, and I don't even think he's that good anyways, but before you talk bad about Cody Ceci, can we take a second and talk about the fact that your top right shot defenseman is Justin Barron. He's awful. Last week, I told Trotz on the program, I'm like, Justin Barron is awful. And Trotz was like, you got to give him a chance. I'm like, isn't that what last year was? Last year was his chance. And he was awful. So let's be nice when it comes to Cody Ceci. The idea that Barry Trotz is done with David Poyle's players. I will say this. Have you noticed? I heard Vingan bring this up today about the opening day lineup from last year. Now, Scott Wedgwood was the goalie, and that was a Barry Trotz signing, and Scott Wedgwood is gone. But outside of that, Gus Nyquist and Luke Shin were Trotz guys. Everybody else, Poyle guys, Carrier, Fabro, Sissons. Right now, the Poyle guys include the contracts you can't move, and Soros, whom Barry loves, and Michael McCarron and Cole Smith. That's pretty much it. But you can't put this on David Poyle. You can't put this terrible trade today on David Poyle, or what looks like a terrible trade. Let me be frank. I don't know Nick Hague, but the one thing I say about Nick Hague is this. If I've never heard who you are, it's called the Mikhail Granlund rule. If I've never heard of you, you probably suck. Because for years, the Predators have added players via trade who I've never heard of. And for years, as soon as they add those players, with all due respect, the Chris Masons and the Hal Gills tell me how good that player's going to be. And I'm like, I've never heard of this guy. And then about 3 weeks into it, I'm like, why the hell did you trade for this Kyle Turris? He doesn't do anything. Why the hell did you trade for Mikhail Granlund? He's not any good. If I've never heard of you, you're probably not very good. The guys I've heard of when they've traded for him, no, look, I heard of Wayne Simmons, and he wasn't very good. But the guys I've heard of, I heard of PK Subban when they traded for him. One texter says, Hague in Nashville is a second-pair defenseman. He was buried a bit by Vegas with how good their defensive core was, but it still doesn't address the right-handed defenseman situation. Barron is fine. He's young, too. Barron sucks. Let's move off of him for a second. Now back to Hague. Here's the problem. What the Predators really need is they really need a first-pair right-shot defenseman. They need to put that guy with Brady Shea. So if I had acquired Rasmus Andersson, for instance, I would have put Rasmus Andersson with Brady Shea because that would have been my shutdown pair and it would have been my top penalty killing unit, which is what they need. If Yossi's on one pair and Hague is on the other pair and Shea's on another pair, one of those guys has to be the third pair defenseman. And it's not going to be the $9 million guy and it's not going to be the $7 million guy. So I guess you're going to go from the $2 million guy to the $5 million guy who plays like the $2 million guy. And don't give me this Vegas decor so good kind of stuff. I've seen this all the time. Some guy's a good player on the Chiefs. He signs a deal somewhere else. He stinks and he goes back to the Chiefs. Matthew from Jolton says Dante Fabro had 26 points and was plus 23 for Columbus. Damn. That's bad. One texter says, can you get Greg Wyshynski, Elliot Friedman, or Darren Drager on the radio station to explain how Vegas manages to get to trade for all the best players without ever going over the cap? So we know that Vegas abuses the LTIR. But I do wonder when it comes to Vegas and their salary cap with how they do this so that every single year there's a player on the market that's like, well, we're hearing Johnny Joe might be looking for a trade out of, pick a random team that sucks, Utah. And somehow, every time, Johnny Joe ends up in Vegas. Whether it's Mark Stone or Thomas Hertel or Jack Eichel or whomever, Noah Hannafin, they always end up there. But maybe some of that is because teams like you give them Colton Sissons at half off. I mean, I'm looking at their cap right now. The Vegas Golden Knights, currently, pre-Mitch Marner, because I do not see Marner and his $12 million on here. Pre-Mitch Marner, the Vegas Golden Knights are at $2.1 million in terms of what they have as far as the cap is concerned. So in order to get to $12 million, they'd have to get rid of 10. So that means getting rid of Mark Stone at 9.5, who's got a no movement clause, which I don't think they can do. Thomas Hertel, who's got a modified no trade clause at 6.7. William Karlsson, modified no trade clause, 10 teams at 5.9. Ivan Barbashev at 5. I mean, I'm guessing they're going to have to get rid of Karlsson and Barbashev. Oh, never mind. Figured it out. Sorry, figured it out. They've got Alex Pietrangelo on long-term injured reserve at $8.8 million. There you go. There's your money. That's how they did it. I'm a little surprised that the Predators didn't try to, get one of those top 6 forwards as part of the deal. Instead of getting the crappy defenseman, why didn't they try to go after, I don't know who's on the modified no trade clause for Thomas Hertel, but why not go after Thomas Hertel? But again, the Predators, they want the bad players, I guess. Who knows? Merle in Mount Juliet says, you said the magic word prospect. They're all prospects and have to earn their playing time. I'll tell you this about Brady Martin right now. Brady Martin's not earning any playing time. Brady Martin, if they want to make him the second line center, he'll be the second line center. Why? Because of where they picked him. It's like Cam Ward. You really think there's going to be a competition at the quarterback spot? Even if I was the coach of the Titans, and you know how hell-bent I am on not running Cam Ward out there before he's ready, Cam Ward's playing time would not be determined by merit. It would be determined by whether or not Cam Ward is ready. And so I would sit him for the first 2 games against Denver and the Rams so I can get that Denver defense and Jared Verse in the rearview mirror and then put Cam Ward out there to have success. But that's not merit-based. That is strategically based for the best interest of my high investment. When it comes to Brady Martin, that's what he is. He is a high investment. And so that, I believe, will be their focus. Will be how they take care of their investment. One texter on the text line says, Vegas is putting Pietrangelo on the LTIR. Man, that is so nice. So nice. Apparently it's pronounced Nicholas Hague. No, excuse me, Hague. Whatever. I'd say the trade, man, that's the thing that I still don't totally understand. One texter says, the trade gets worse by the hour. I mean, the Predators signed their third-line defenseman to a $5.5 million contract, and Florida extends their top defenseman to a $6.5 million contract. Trotz should be sued for GM malpractice. One texter says, I think the thing that excites me the most about the Brady Martin pick is that he was still putting up good numbers with one of the worst teams in the WHL with the Scarbini line mates compared to Hagen's playing with an elite NCAA team and elite teammates. How versatile his game reminds me a lot more of Mark Scheifele than Mike Fisher and some of the other comparisons out there. I would have preferred Hagen's, but I am genuinely excited for Martin, and I will buy his jersey on day one. If I'm getting Mark Scheifele, I'm okay with it. If I'm getting Mark Scheifele that is so tough and such a competitor and is just out, fine, sold, done. But am I getting that? 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program. That's 615-737-1025. A massive, and I mean massive trade in the NFL today. I mean massive in general, but massive. I mean massive for July in the NFL. We'll hit it next. Stillman Company, 105 the game.
Huge news early. Jalen Ramsey's now a Pittsburgh Steeler. Wow. Jonnu Smith, also a Pittsburgh Steeler. Minka Fitzpatrick, no longer a Steeler. He's once again a Miami Dolphin, alongside a couple late round draft swaps almost between the Steelers and the Dolphins. Huge news this morning. Jalen Ramsey being traded had been a conversation that's been taking place for like a month now. Had a big price tag, like $24 million or something along those lines. Who was going to pay? Who was going to make the trade? Who was going to have Jalen Ramsey on their team? At the age of 30, still in the middle of his prime, 9-year NFL vet Darius J. Butler. Do we agree?
Very much so. Very much in his prime. Just got re-upped, a couple years ago, so hate to see him leaving the Dolphins, obviously.
A lot of people, obviously, Darius Butler, massive Dolphins fan,
Huge.
South Florida boy, but he has picked up some other teams as well because the Miami Dolphins have not had much success. Now, when they bring Jalen in, they bring Tyreek in, obviously they draft Tua, they start spending all their resources on trying to win in a big way, and now it basically everybody's gone. Ramsey was supposed to go back maybe to L.A. to be on the Rams. Then the Steelers conversation started to kind of chime in. Now we know Jalen is a Pittsburgh Steeler. Minka Fitzpatrick is now a Miami Dolphin. And Jonnu Smith, who's a tight end for the Miami Dolphins, that was allegedly being shopped to the Pittsburgh Steelers over the last few weeks. But was he just trying to get a deal done?
There you go. That was the McAfee show earlier today. How about that big old baddie of a trade in the middle of July for the NFL? Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith for Minka Fitzpatrick. Now, after the fact, people will start spinning narratives about why they're making these trades, and I don't really get too into that. You know, for instance, they talked about, I think it was Albert Breer, who I think is the most plugged-in reporter in the NFL. Albert Breer put out there, hey, Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator of the Dolphins, who comes from the Ravens. The Ravens have Kyle Hamilton at safety, and they view Minka Fitzpatrick as kind of the same thing, so this was an important blah, blah, blah. I don't buy that. What I think happened is Minka Fitzpatrick makes a lot of money. So do the other two. So instead of the Steelers just paying a bunch of money and not getting rid of any money, they're going to get rid of a little bit of money. The Dolphins are still going to save some money, and then they're going to let Minka Fitzpatrick walk as a free agent, or they'll probably try to deal him around the trade deadline. So here's what this deal looks like to me. Forget about what everybody says about it. Forget about, again, what it looks like to me. Number one, the Pittsburgh Steelers have decided, if for nothing else, for a year or two, they're going to be very un-Steeler-like. The Steelers like to draft, the Steelers like to develop, and then the Steelers like to let people go. Every now and then there's a Jerome Bettis who the Steelers acquire, but that's really more the exception than the rule. How many guys have the Steelers signed to multi-year deals that they've really banked on over the years? It's been a couple. Ben, Cam Hayward. But a lot of times it's, we use up Le'Veon Bell, then he goes. Antonio Brown, we didn't see eye to eye, he goes. So this idea of the Steelers going out and getting a bunch of big names, that's not the Steelers we're used to. I almost kind of wonder if Mike Tomlin is done with being 9-7. And if Mike Tomlin has said, you know what, screw it, just give me some players and let's try it. It feels very much like the Predators last year of, we're going to go out and get a bunch of old pawpaws and we're going to put it together and you will see this will work. But who am I to judge? Again, they're not the Predators. They're the Steelers. And those are different players. It's not Stamkos, Marchessault, Brady Shea. I don't want this to turn everybody off from old people. Because just because your old guys didn't work doesn't mean their old guys won't work. I don't think it'll work for the Steelers. But if I'm the Steelers, I might as well be a massive disappointment or a massive success story and go from there. So I appreciate it. It's a very un-Steeler-like. This is not how they operate. That would be like Jerry Jones getting out ahead of something and signing a bunch of guys early instead of signing them late. It would be like the Bengals signing a bunch of guys in unrestricted free agency. It would be like the Titans keeping good players. They just don't do it. Then there's the Dolphin side of this. The Dolphins are tanking, okay? Last year, they signed Tua to the contract, and Tua got the concussions, and Tua's not good in big games anyways. But they're stuck because some of these contracts are immovable, And it's guys like Tyreek Hill, who they probably don't want to have to pay anymore, but they're going to suck it up for a year and see where they go. But the Dolphins are ultimately going to tear it down. I don't understand how the 85-year-old owner can keep going through these rebuilds, but he keeps going through these rebuilds. I think it looks like the Steelers got Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, and to make it a fair trade, they sent back Minkah Fitzpatrick. But I looked at Minkah Fitzpatrick's coverage stats last year. He was not very good. My guess is the Steelers think Minkah Fitzpatrick is done, and so they think they're upgrading by having Ramsey at either corner or safety, and Jonnu Smith as an extra weapon for Aaron Rodgers now that George Pickens is gone. They've got Jonnu Smith as somebody that Aaron Rodgers can throw the ball to. But it is a sexy trade. I mean, that is some big names in the middle of July for the NFL. Doesn't really move the needle for me on either guy or either team. But I will say this. I don't think that, this is me, I don't think the Titans, unless the Dolphins would have taken L'Jarius Sneed, who, by the way, claims that he's healthy. I do not think that the Dolphins would have taken what I would have done, which is pick swapping my way to getting Ramsey and Jonnu and paying the money. But I do think the Steelers will be a better team because of this trade. Coy in Clarksville says, so are the Titans not going to get veteran tight end help that can help Cam Ward security? So are the Titans not going to get a veteran tight end that can be Cam Ward's security blanket? Or are they just going to roll the dice with Chig, who has one big catch a year? You must have a reliable tight end for a young quarterback to succeed in this league. Coy, I want you to know something. I have taken that exact sentiment and complaint to the highest levels at Titan management. And my sense is they're going to roll the dice with Chig and hope that the young quarterback can overcome it. I mean, I think there's a pretty good chance Titans are going to ruin Cam Ward. I'm not rooting for it. I think Cam's got talent. I think he belongs in the first round. But I think there's a chance the Titans are going to ruin Cam Ward. And not having a tight end for him, I think, is part of the equation. Evan Bouchard stays in Edmonton with a 4-year, $10.5 million contract. How is it that Florida can get Aaron Ekblad to take $6.1 million, but Edmonton can't get Bouchard to take less? Maybe it has something to do with, the taxes and the fact that Ekblad didn't want to leave because it's Florida during the winter. I don't think it's the end-all be-all of why the Panthers are good, but I certainly think it matters. 615-737-1025 here in the program, 615-737-1025. So there's one thing when it comes to the Predators that I hate that I'm about to say. I hate it, but I got to say it. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. And I hate what I'm about to say. It was a tough weekend as a Predators fan, I'm not going to lie. On Friday, the Predators, I thought, were set to take James Hagens, and they took Brady Martin instead. I get it. I understand it. I know what Barry Trotz saw. In fact, I saw this coming. When I had Barry Trotz on the show Tuesday, and he said the most important thing was the level of competitiveness in a player he was picking, and then I saw the Athletic said the most competitive player was Brady Martin, and that it wasn't close. I said, that sounds like it's right up Trotz's alley. In fact, I predicted that's who they were going to pick on Friday. But I hate what I'm about to say. Because it wasn't just the pick on Friday night that a lot of people didn't like, and I understand. But then there was the trade last night. Sissons, Lazan. With all due respect to Colton Sissons' career as a Nashville Predator, I mean, Colton Sissons was a good Predator. You know, that's a guy who you'll never retire his number, but he's welcome anytime. He should be welcome anytime. He should be remembered as a great Predator. Gave everything he had for this organization. But I'm not going to miss Lazan and Sissons. I don't think your fortunes change one way or another. And I heard Adam just dropping his pants today about Sissons, about how great of a guy he was. And I knew Sissons a little bit. Never like, I would never say like knew him personally or whatever. He did hit the post in game 4 of the playoffs against Vancouver, which I'm still not technically over. But I'm not really, that's not the issue. And if Vegas makes it to the second round of the playoffs, and considering the fact that Vegas gets to trade for every single good player in the NHL, today they added Mitch Marner, there's a pretty decent chance that Vegas is going to get to the Western Conference Final. And then your third rounder that you receive as part of this deal would become a second rounder. And second rounders are not nothing. Shea Weber was a second rounder. Roman Josi was a second rounder. But nobody thinks outside of Predatorland that this Nick Hague is very good. Again, when I saw the trade was made, I had never heard of Nick Hague. And Jake, what's the Mikhail Granlund rule?
If you haven't heard of him, he sucks.
If I haven't heard of somebody, they suck. Until proven otherwise. And so I had never heard of Nick Hague. This morning, Robbie Stanley was texting me like, I can't believe that they did this. Adam Vingan says that he felt a smidge better when he heard about the draft pick return. But, and this is what I hate that I'm about to say. When a general manager in sports does the opposite of what everybody else would do all the time, it starts to make me think that either this general manager is smarter than everybody else and nobody in the world gets it, or that team doesn't have a clue. And 99.9% of the time, when a general manager does things or a head coach that runs an operation does things that nobody else would even consider doing, it is a representation that your team does not have a clue. I remember when Bill Belichick hired his ex-defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, to be the offensive coordinator of the New England Patriots. But Jared, he's Bill Belichick. He knows. Yeah, but this doesn't make any sense. I remember when the Mets hired an agent, Brody Van Wagenen, to be their general manager. And then he immediately traded away the team's first-round draft choice for Robinson Cano, who was old and was Brody Van Wagenen's ex-client. Like, what are you doing? Nico Harrison was an executive at Nike. He becomes the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks and turns around and immediately trades Luka Doncic. Well, as of late, Barry Trotz has had a bunch of these, what are you doing type moves. And I'm not sure what to make of it. And the worst part about all of this isn't that I like Barry Trotz when he makes a what are you doing type move, and it's becoming harder and harder to defend. The hard part for me is that the whole first year Trotz was general manager, he seemed to make a lot of decisions that I thought were good, sound decisions. I'd look at him on the front end and he'd, have an explanation and say, hey, trust me. And I'd say, okay. And then it would work. Whether it was the decision to pull the Vegas trip, which I actually loved when it happened, whether it was the decision to move on from Matt Duchene because we want to get a winning culture in here, we want to get a tough culture in here, that worked. Retaining the salary on Joe Hansen, I think that was a good thing. Bringing in those Ryan O'Reillys and Luke Shins and the serial winners. Gus Nyquist was an unmitigated success in Barry Trotz's first season. Moving on from John Hines, hiring Andrew Burnett. Thought it was a great decision. Still do. But now, Trotz keeps making decisions that I keep sitting there and I'm like, really? And they kind of get a little wackier and wackier as we go. He signed a goalie who never wins in the playoffs and then claimed that he was going to be able to keep the other goalie who they used a first-round draft choice on. And then Trotz got mad at the young goalie who's in the minor leagues in the AHL. Trotz got mad at him when he looked at that contract that your goalie signed and said, well, hold on, wait a minute. There's only one net. I'd like to be traded somewhere else. And Trotz and his guys crossed their arms like, how dare Yaroslav Askarov want to go somewhere that he could play? I'm like, did you not think that was going to happen? 95% of the teams in the league, and I said this to Barry Trotz on the day of the last game of the year this year, 95% of the teams in the league would have fired the head coach after the season the Predators had this past year. I'd say 50% of the teams in the league would have fired Andrew Burnett by Thanksgiving of last year. And yet, for whatever reason, Barry Trotz is keeping this coach who, again, for whatever reason, could not get through to the locker room last year. Whether they listened to him, didn't listen to him, lost the room, that doesn't matter. He clearly couldn't get through to them for them to play at their potential. And then he brings everybody back. It's one thing if you were to keep the coach but change the core of the team. And it'd be another thing if you fired the coach but said, okay, now we're going to bring in this coach and he's going to work with this core. But he didn't either. Then some of the trades lately are like, wait a minute, what? He dealt Luke Shin and Tommy Novak for Michael Bunting in a 4th-round pick, which, again, I thought was fine. Get rid of Novak. I think he sucks. Shin, whatever. But the next day, Winnipeg turns around and trades for Luke Shin for a 2nd-round pick. We're talking about Adam Vingan feeling a smidge better about today's trade because that pick might be a 2nd-round pick. Winnipeg gave away a 2nd-round pick for Luke Shin. I mean, at some point, Barry Trotz has to know the market. The Eric Holla trade. Eric Holla was awful last year. And I understand, hey, we think that he probably is a good fit next to Fedor Svechkov. And so we want to bring in Eric Holla. That's fine. But don't bail the Devils out for a player who had 21 points in 69 games last year. So it just feels like there's a lot of these, what are you doing? Type moves that the Predators have been making. And the response from Barry Trotz is kind of like, hey, trust me, bro. And it's like, that credit's kind of running out. At some point, I need a move to make, or a move that you've made to work or to make some sense, because for the last year, I don't know what happened the first year. The first year made a lot of moves that made sense. I mean, even the Brady Martin pick, I get that. He's a high compete guy. He was a high-end prospect. A lot of people think he's a Sam Bennett comp. You would take Sam Bennett with the 5th overall pick. Stop acting like you're too good for Sam Bennett. You would. But these moves, this trade, where the entire hockey world is thinking, wait a minute, they gave Nick Hague how much money? Even Greg Wyshynski was like, Well, maybe with the cap going up and Luke Richardson, it'll make the move make sense. Aaron Ekblad is the top pair defenseman for the reigning Cup champions. He makes $6.1 million. You're paying this guy, a third pair defenseman, $5.5 million. So even me, a Barry Trotz supporter, a believer that Barry's no nonsense is pure honesty, should be able to cut through the bull crap. And I know he knows hockey, and they should be able to build a winner. Some of these decisions, I'm like, make it make sense. But I'm also exhausted and tired of having to be explained every move. Whatever happened to the team making a move and saying, oh, that's a good move. Oh, I get what they're trying to do there. That's where I'm starting to struggle a little bit with where this thing is right now. Again, I like Barry Trotz, and I hate having to say it, but I am so tired of every move needing an explanation. I am so tired of every signing being like Vingan and Robbie and everyone immediately saying, what are they doing? As if I know. That's what I am starting to have a hard time with right now. And this trade today, this seems like, okay, what are you doing? Well, Jared, they're going to move Yossi to the right side, and then he'll be a top pair defenseman. And with the cap going up at $5.5 million, he'll be so the guy who was a third pair defenseman in Vegas is going to be a top pair defenseman, and I'm going to take my best defenseman, and I'm going to move him over to the right side. Yes. Yeah, I don't like that explanation. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll hit your phones on all of that. Here on the program, that's 615-737-1025. And there's one other thing that I'm struggling to figure out with the Predators. We'll get to that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. You did a great job in the press conference. The question was asked about, are you going to fix the defense internally or externally? And you did a great job of not answering that question. I was very proud of you.
Yeah, well,
but I got to know, like, is it really going to be, Yossi and Justin Barron? Because I know you said Barron played better last year, but I don't know.
No, I think he will. I got to give the young man a chance. I think getting getting Lazan and maybe Yossi moving over to the right would be a possibility that we're looking at, and then finding a partner for Shea is sort of the goal. Get another right D. The whole league's looking for a right D. I moved some right D last year, but we also have some internal things that the Willsbys of the world, and you don't want to hear that, but. I think if we can just tweak one more right side D, then we'll be in good shape.
Okay, that was Barry Trotz last week. So now Lazan's out, and Hague, for double the money, is in. And this doesn't, again, solve the big issue here that I guess this is what makes this trade so hard for me to understand. You're overpaying for Nick Hague, who was a third-pair defenseman for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, there is an argument to be made that Vegas, with Noah Hannafin and with Braden McNabb and with Shea Theodore and that group, that they are very, very good on defense. So Nick Hague is probably better than a third-pair guy. Fine. You can make that argument. You can have that. And it's an overpay. And when it comes to the overpay, you can argue, well, the cap's going up. I mean, that doesn't really matter to me. Aaron Ekblad, again, is $6.1 million for the next 8 years for the Florida Panthers. And Aaron Ekblad, even with the cap going up, is still going to be $6.1 million. So I don't really buy that one either, but okay, fine. You can make that argument if you want to. Cap's going up, and he's really more of a second-pair left-shot defenseman than he is a third-pair left-shot defenseman. But the problem is that he's still a left shot defenseman. They need right shot defenseman because Justin Barron is terrible and Nick Blankenberg is the definition of a Scarbini. Just a random whatever. Played a handful of games for a couple of years in Columbus, and he got called up from Milwaukee because he had to, and he had some nice moments, but come on now. That's Nick Blankenberg. Those are the two NHL-level right shots that the Nashville Predators have. The one guy they're going to add into the mix this year, Tanner Molendyk, who is their first-round pick or one of their 2 first-round picks in 2023 and is knocking on the door of being ready for the NHL, is a left shot defenseman. So right now, just looking at the defense they have, it's going to be Yossi, left shot defenseman, Shea, left shot defenseman, Hague, left shot defenseman, Molendyk, left shot defenseman, Spencer Stastny, left shot defenseman, and Justin Barron, who is terrible. I don't think that fixes the defense. Well, we can move Yossi over to the right side and put Hague up on the left side, which is what we did with Ryan McDonough when he was here. Are you trying to tell me that Nick Hague is Ryan McDonough? And you say you need a right-handed shot, a guy to go with Brady Shea? Don't you put Justin Barron with him. Justin Barron stinks. So I would have understood the trade and the overpay if Hague was a right shot defenseman. But he's not. He's a left shot defenseman. And that's where I struggle with this move today more than anything else. You know, a lot of people are mad that the Predators didn't draft Blake Fiddler because Blake Fiddler, Vern Fiddler's kid, was a right shot defenseman, and a lot of people thought he was going to be a first-round pick, and the Predators passed on him 3 times in the first round and then passed on him in the second round, and then he was taken. And Jared, we need a right shot defenseman. That doesn't bother me because Blake Fiddler is probably 3 or 4 years away from playing in the NHL, so that doesn't bother me. But right now, you need a right shot defenseman. Now, I'm not saying give up the world for Noah Dobson and give him $10 million, but I am saying you need to get a guy who shoots right-handed. Apparently, according to Pierre Lebrun, Rasmus Anderson, the best right shot on the market, wants to go to Vegas. 4 hours ago, Pierre said, Rasmus Anderson's preferred trade destination is the Vegas Golden Knights. The Flames defenseman possesses a modified no-trade clause and will become a free agent in 2026. Vegas and Calgary have had numerous discussions over the past week, but still, there's a no. So, can you not get in the market for him? You need a right shot defenseman. That's just me. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025 here on the program. By the way, it'll be, is it Nick Roy or Nick Waugh to Toronto from Vegas, Jake?
I believe it's Waugh.
Okay. He's
Not
going to
100% sure,
Toronto in the Vegas Marner deal, which is why Vegas needed Colton Sissons. Let's go to Michael, who's up next here on the program. Michael, thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. You go ahead.
I appreciate it. Well, you touched on half of it already, talking about the left-handed defenseman. Yeah, I was going to go down that too. It blows my mind too. But I want to ask you about the Brady Martin pick. Look, did I want, someone more flashy? Yes. But Trotzy had talked about taking swings. This guy was projected to go 7 by NHL.com to Boston, and we picked him at 5. So, yeah, he doesn't have the high-end supposed ceiling, and I know that's what Trotzy said last year when he got Stern. He wanted a home run hit, high ceilings, but, only 2 picks earlier. So is it that bad a pick in your opinion? Like when you look at it that way, where he was slotted to go was like 6 to 8, and he went 5th. So,
no. It's not. I do not think that the Brady Martin pick, I wouldn't have done it. Michael, thank you for your call. I would not have done it. I would have drafted Hagens. But I do not think it was a reach, and I do not think it was a bad pick. Where we sit today. I mean, I'll put it to you like this. How many legitimate NHL prospects do the Predators have right now? And this is just off the top of my head, of what they have or don't have. So off the top of my head, top prospects. So Jake, let's say Evangelista and younger. So Evangelista counts as a young guy that they're still kind of bringing up. Fair?
Yeah, it's fair. He's still a young guy.
So that's the 2020 draft class and older. Evangelista, Svechkov, LaRue, Kemmel, David Edstrom, Reed Schaefer. Trotz really likes Ozzy Weisblatt, but I'm not sure he's much of a prospect, but screw it, we'll count him. Igor Surin, Teddy Stiga, and Brady Martin. That's 10. Now add Riker Lee, first round pick, got to count him. That's 11. What have I said? For every 5 prospects that you think you have, think Tomasino, Cody Glass type, for every 5 prospects you think you have, 2 at best will pop, maybe 1. So of that group, you're probably going to end up with 2 players. Now, Brady Martin's probably going to be one of them. But let's just say 3, because it's 4 draft classes and you've got all those first rounders, and like Edstrom was a high second rounder, etc. Then on defense, there's Mullendijk. There's the kid they took in the first round the other day, Cam, whatever his name is.
Reed.
Cam Reed. I kept wanting to say Cam Robinson, but I'm like, no, that's the football guy. Cam Reed and Andrew Gibson. That's 3. So you've got about 14 guys. We all know that Forsberg and Saros are not going anywhere long term. Same with Brady Shea. So if you think that this kid, Brady Martin, is your future captain, which is what I think Barry Trotz thinks today. I don't know if we're going to have Barry on the program this week or not. I don't know if Barry's going to be mad that we crapped on this trade. I don't know. Doesn't seem to be that way. He seems to not really care, but who knows? But I am going to ask him, do you expect Brady Martin to be the next captain of the Nashville Predators? Because I think he does. So if you get a Selke levels number 1 center who is your captain, that's worth the 5th overall pick in the draft. The truth is, the way the NHL draft works, Most guys that are on your top lines were picked 1, 2, 3, 4. One texter says Martin was projected 11th. Not in the mock draft I looked at right before. Corey Promman had the Predators taking him at 5. And said that he said, this was what he said in his final mock draft. I think they likely go Desnoyers if he's available at 5. Otherwise, my bet is between Martin and McQueen for them. McQueen bears some risk at 5, but Nashville did a lot of background work on him, and Trotz was quoted this week as saying he thinks McQueen could be a number 1 center, which he did say last week on our program. So don't say he was projected to go 11th. He wasn't. 615-737-1025. Phones coming up next. Plus, the one thing that I am convinced Barry Trotz was going to do, and I'm not the only one. We'll hit that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Hey, Barry, we hear about all the different rumors, draft picks, who's trading who's trying to move up, who's moving back. I mean, you had a number of picks in the first round this year. Were there a lot of phone calls? Were there a lot of discussions?
There was a tremendous amount of discussions. I was on the phone after he made the 5th pick, and I had, we've done some preliminary work on the front end, but I was on the phone probably from about pick 7 through 18, I think. And I actually had a deal, and our player fell through in the fairly early. The player that we were trying to get another player within I'll say the top 12, 13 picks, and we had a deal in place, but one team grabbed the player, and we had to move on from there. But there's still some other guys that were on our board, and I worked my way up. I think to 18 or 19, and then we already had a pick at 23. So
there you go. That was Barry on NHL Network with EJ Raddick. And I wasn't the only one that said this, but I heard that on Saturday, and I said he was trying to get Roger McQueen. So Barry talked about McQueen being a wild card and not knowing where he was going to go, and talking about, hey, the hopefully his medicals checked out. And I said to him, well, you've seen the medicals? He's like, I have seen the medicals. And then he talked about his family and everything else. Let me just say this. I don't know what the trade would have been. It clearly would have been involving 23 and 26. So it would have involved what ultimately ended up being Cam, Reed, and Riker Lee. And I have no idea if Cam Reed or Riker Lee are going to be any good anyways. People really seem to like Cam Reed. But the reason I say this is I don't know what else it would have cost. I don't know. I believe he would have moved up with Pittsburgh. Barry's done a lot of business with Pittsburgh since he's been the general manager. Kyle Dubas, and he worked out the trade last year for Cody Glass. They worked out the trade for Michael Bunting. They ended up dumping off Tomasino to Pittsburgh. So I think there's a good relationship there. And Pittsburgh, I think, was at 11 and 12. And so I don't know if Pittsburgh was in on McQueen or not or whatever, but my gut feeling tells me that the Predators would have made a deal with Pittsburgh. They would have moved up, and they would have taken Roger McQueen. And that would have been a huge, huge swing. Big guy with a bad back, like 6'5", but an elite skater when healthy. But he would have, and I would have supported that measure. Assuming that they did not trade a first rounder unprotected in next year's draft. If they had traded the 2 first rounders plus, let's say, a second rounder, or the 2 first rounders plus a left shot defenseman to move up where the Penguins picked, and they would have taken McQueen if he didn't go to Anaheim at 9. If they had done that, people would have said, oh, but he's got a bad back and it's Caleb Farley, and that's okay. The pick that has to hit is Martin at 5. That's the one that has to hit. Everything else, you can take your big swing. If Martin's your top line center and McQueen's got a bad back and turns into Caleb Farley, I don't think we look at it that way. So let me just state for the record, people don't get in trouble for things they don't do or things that haven't happened yet. But I do just want to say that if Trotz had made that move to try to have his cake and eat it too, I would have supported it. I would have supported it. 615-737-1025. One texter says, I'm stuck between selling off as many veterans as you can and getting the young guys up and playing. I don't think you're stuck between that. I think they're stuck between that. One texter says, dear Lord, it's right tackle for you all over again. If we are in this situation before the season starts, then you can hit Barry Trotz hard. What, if they don't have any right shot defensemen? Like, that's supposed to change? How much cap space after the move they made today, where they gave a third pair defenseman $600,000 less than Aaron Ekblad got? How much cap space do they have now? And they retain the Colton Sissons? This says, according to Puckopedia, $12 million in cap space. What, are they going to go get Rasmus Anderson? One texter said, why get a right shot defenseman when you've got 7 left shot defensemen? I used to not care about that either. But the more I've talked about it, the more it's an issue. They thought Brady, Shea, and Yossi could play together. And after about 3 weeks of watching it happen, they said, yeah, no. And now Barry Trotz said, well, we'll try to move Yossi over to the right side, and we want to get a right shot pair for Shea. And it's like, well, I guess that didn't work out. Justin says, why has Trotz regressed? He started out strong, but he stopped listening to his other counsel. He has just fallen in love with power, and is he now drunk on it? Has he lost his marbles? I just want to know what made him change his tact and become the league's dumping ground to boot. It does really feel like, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but it really does feel like Barry Trotz is the general manager you run to when you're trying to rip somebody off. When you're trying to take advantage of somebody and you're trying to get out of a contract you don't want, you're trying to get something retained that you don't need, you go to Barry Trotz. Because Vegas did it today, and Pittsburgh did it when they turned around and flipped Luke Shin for a second rounder. And the Devils did it with Eric Halla. It just kind of feels like when you want to take advantage of somebody, you call the Predators. And I'm not saying that we'll look back on this 5 years from now and say, wow, they really took advantage of it. Because Michael Bunting, I actually liked his game. I want to say it was the Maple Leaf game I went to last year when I saw Michael Bunting play and get his ass in front of the net and actually be hard to play against. And I thought, wow, I actually kind of like this guy. After everybody, myself included, crapped on Trotz and the Predators the day of the deadline when Luke Shin got traded for a 4th-round pick on Tuesday and went for a 2nd-round pick on Wednesday. But at the same time, I'd like to win a trade when it happens. Not saying that's the end-all be-all. Again, that's like Barry Trotz saying, hey, last year, I was the winner of the year on July 1, and look at how we did. I.e., it doesn't matter what people think in the offseason. I get that. But I would like to make a deal where instead of having to explain it, it's like, okay, trust me, this is going to work. And I don't have to trust you that it's going to work, but I have to just, that trade makes sense. One texter says, is Yossi even the top guy? And does he even come back 100%? So Trotz said on the program on Tuesday last week that he wants to be good next year. And I can't run from that. Once he says that, I forget about 2028, and I'm worried about next year too. They seem to think Yossi's coming back. If you were to get the diagnosis that Roman Josi is not going to be the same player, then don't you almost have to kind of go to your veterans and say, hey, guys, Roman's not getting any better. We're probably better off tearing the whole thing down. Stinking and getting Bedard's cousin next year, who's supposed to be a superstar, and just moving forward that way. So as of right now, I'm going to say I think Yossi's your top guy. But I'd like to put him on the left side with a real right shot defenseman who isn't Justin Barron. One texter says the Brady Martin pick screams Mike Vrabel. Well, what have I said about Mike Vrabel when it comes to his worth? You've never heard me say Mike Vrabel is a bad coach. I've never said it, and I don't believe it. I think Mike Vrabel is a great coach. I do. But I said this the day John Robinson got fired, and I said it in the offseason, and I believe it to this day. Mike Vrabel should not be picking players in the NFL because Mike Vrabel is not trained to pick players in the NFL. Mike Vrabel played the NFL. He's been a linebacker coach. He's been a D coordinator, and he's been a head coach. He's never been a scout. He's never been a personnel assistant. He's never done any of that. Now, Trotz did have that half a year with Poyle where he was kind of, waiting in the wings to be the future general manager, which is more than I can say for Vrabel. But my big issue for Vrabel is I don't think he can pick the players. And we'll see in New England. They picked a tackle with short arms who does kind of have a Brady Martin vibe. They picked him 4th overall. And everybody says, oh, no, you'll see. So let me see. But I agree. There is kind of a Vrabel element to this of, Hey, if you give me 110% and this guy's going to give me 110%, I will coach you into greatness. There is something to that with this pick, which is, again, I think a pick that was made by Barry Trotz, the coach. One texter says, my question for you is, if next season is not successful, like Trotz said he is hoping for, will you call for his job? Is it a cop-out that I say on this program, nobody gets in trouble for something that hasn't happened? And Barry Trotz has not had a bad year yet for this upcoming season, so I'm not ready to say what I will say at the end of the year. A lot of times people say, oh, you're just saying this so that you can say this and you can say that and you can, and I'm really not. I just kind of react whenever I see it. However I feel, I turn around and that's the reaction. So I don't know how I'm going to feel at the end of the year, the middle of the year, or whatever. But I'll just say today I'm not very happy. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. There is one thing I have just got to get off my chest. Did you know that NBA free agency started today? Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game.
LeBron James is opting in to his nearly $53 million player option for the 2025-2026 season. So what we do know is he will be playing a record 23rd NBA season. Still not sure whether he's going to play one more season or he has multiple years left. But I'm told he wants to compete for a championship next season, and he is uncertain about the Lakers roster moving forward. And my understanding is James is supportive of the Lakers positioning themselves around Luka Doncic, building for the future. And Rich Paul told me this morning, the Clutch Sports CEO, that the Lakers have been true partners of his and LeBron James for 8 seasons while he's been there. But as we see right there, he also told me the franchise is going to do what's best for them. They understand that they have to do what's best for the long term. And this adds an interesting wrinkle here in free agency. LeBron James is evaluating how he wants to finish his career.
Okay, that was Shams Charania on ESPN. NBA free agency opened, I believe, 49 minutes ago. And I know we've been wall-to-wall hockey today. We had that one little football trade segment, and I know not many people care about the NBA, but I have to get this off my chest. Think of this as like a Rex rant. I got to complain about this. So yesterday I saw the headline, LeBron James opts in for $52.6 million, which is a lot of money, but the NBA makes a lot of money, and LeBron is certainly very, very good. And I always love it when a player makes some ridiculous amount of money like this, because then I go tell my dad, and my dad always is like, why pay players so much money for But I was reading a quote in the article at ESPN, and it was basically what Sham said right there, which is along the lines of LeBron is going to be watching the Lakers. He wants to be somewhere he can win. Basically the veiled threat of, if the Lakers don't make moves to win, then LeBron's going to demand a trade. And I must have read that line. Not that I care about LeBron, but I must have read that line like 7 times. Because something really bothered me about this. LeBron's making $53 million next year. For 1 year. $53 million. And LeBron wants to watch the Lakers build him a team to win a championship. He wants to make sure that the Lakers are win now. Isn't that why they're paying him $53 million? Isn't that, hey, I want to show that you're committed to winning. Okay, I'm paying you $53 million to win. That's your job. Your job is to win. That's what I'm paying you for. That's what the money's for. And then it hit me. I had an epiphany. This is why everybody that hates the NBA, that loved Michael Jordan, hates the NBA today. Because Michael Jordan and Kobe knew it was their job to win. What are you paid here for? I'm paid to win. I'm not paid to sell shoes. I'm not paid to score a bunch of points. I'm paid to win. So if that means I need to pass the ball to Robert Horry or I need to pass the ball to Steve Kerr at the end of a big game, I'll do it. If that means, as Michael Jordan said in The Last Dance, if that meant I got to get in your ass, then I'll get in your ass. But not LeBron. LeBron wants the money, and LeBron wants the basketball, and LeBron wants the attention, and LeBron wants all this, but he doesn't want the accountability of having to win. And that's the problem with today's NBA. All those guys are the same way. They lose, and it's, who can I blame first? Kevin Durant. It's not, I need to be better. It's always about, hey, I can blame this guy, blame the coach, blame the team, blame the owner, blame them all. Don't blame me. Again, when I hear somebody that decides to play for $53 million, say, hey, I want you to build a winning team around me, I think that's your job. Your job is to win when you make that kind of money. When you're a star basketball player, your job is to win, to lead your team to victory. It's not to lead your team to a triple-double. It's not to lead your team to a scoring title or to make an all-star team. Your job is to win. And LeBron James doesn't win. Not anymore. And Kevin Durant didn't even make the playoffs last year. But again, these guys, they want all the attention. They want all the fame. They want all the money. And I just think it's so embarrassing. And that's why I think most people are turned off when it comes to basketball. That's why when a Game 7 used to do 30 million viewers, Game 7 does 16 million viewers now. because we just look at these players and say, oh, wow, $53 million, and you're still not happy. Also, one final thing. We've talked a lot of NHL draft today. And a lot of my theories when it comes to the NHL draft, and a lot of my takes and feelings are all about what the Predators did and have nothing to do with the pageantry of the NHL draft. And a lot of people are going to blame it on this decentralized format. That's nonsense. The NBA draft, the NFL draft, the Major League Baseball draft, they don't have all the teams there either. And none of them put on the gong show that the NHL put on Friday night. That is the most do-better I have ever seen of any draft. 5 minutes into the thing, and we have Tony Finau, the golfer, making a woolly mammoth chant that none of us have ever heard of. And I understand the idea of having celebrities say, oh, I love hockey, like Charles Barkley, or the Happy Gilmore thing with Adam Sandler. I get that. But other than that, let's let the commissioner make the picks. Let's act like a big boy league. Because that was very minor league of the NHL Friday night. It was a train wreck. That's it for us. We are out of here. Stillman and Company, Robbie Stanley tomorrow on Robbie and Rex Road will have the full report as to what he saw with Brady Martin and all the other guys they drafted at development camp today. I'm fascinated by that. And that's going to do it for us. We'll see you all tomorrow at 2.